A couple of years ago, my phone broke. It had been pretty old, and I was sort of meaning to get a new one. But after breaking, I had to find a new one fast. I thought about going to the store or looking online. But to try to save some money, I went on Facebook Marketplace. I also wanted to get one as fast as possible. I had heard there were a lot of good cell phones there for cheap. After maybe 30 minutes of looking, I found one. It was the same phone that I had before, but a few generations newer. The price also seemed very cheap compared to what it would be elsewhere. So at that point, I decided to send the seller a message saying that I wanted to buy the phone. Now, the seller's Facebook account was pretty mysterious. Their name was just JM. I clicked on their profile, and they did not have a profile picture. There wasn't much information about them either. Still, I didn't think that was too big of a deal, and I contacted them. It did not take long before I heard back. The seller, Jay, I guess, told me that I could buy the phone as soon as that night, and I agreed. I suggested that we meet at a local shopping center. However, Jay said they could not do that because they had kids and could not leave their house. Instead, I was supposed to come over that night. I said okay, and I agreed to it. I understood that people with kids probably wouldn't be able to just go whenever. So I was given an address, and that night I drove to it. It took maybe 15 minutes to get there. It was a little bit far away in an area that I had never been before. When I got to the address, I saw that it was a house that looked slightly run down, and there didn't appear to be any lights on inside. The whole neighborhood looked a little bit run down, and the houses had fairly large properties. I had no way of texting the seller that I was there because of my phone being broken, but I had my watch, and I was right on time for when we agreed. So I walked up to the front step and rang the doorbell. After maybe 30 seconds, the door started to open. There were two doors, a screen door and then an actual one. The inside door opened just a few inches, and I saw a woman was standing behind it. She told me to go around to the back and then close the door. So I walked around to behind the house and then entered a back door there. This led into a dimly lit kitchen area. The woman was there inside and sitting at a table. I entered and then sat down across from her. It appeared as though every light in the rest of the house was off. We both just sat there in awkward silence for a few moments. Then I mentioned the phone, saying I would like to buy it. The woman said that she would go and get the phone and got up. I kept sitting at the table. She left the room and I waited at the table. The whole thing so far had seemed really strange. As I looked around, I saw no signs of her having kids. So I waited at the table for at least a good 5 minutes. I didn't know what was taking so long. Did she lose the phone or something? I decided to ask. I called out asking if she was okay, and she called back from the other room saying yes, and it would just be a moment. So I kept sitting there, but then at least 5 more minutes went by. I was starting to feel nervous. It was just really strange. When she left the room, she didn't turn any other lights on either. I could barely see around the kitchen as it was. Eventually, I got impatient and I stood up. I walked to the end of the kitchen and to the entrance of what appeared to be the living room. There was no sign of the woman. I called out again, asking what was taking so long. This time, though, I got no response. I kept standing there looking into the living room, and there was a hallway at the end of it. It was really dark, like I said, but after standing there for like a minute, I thought I saw the woman cross the hallway. She did not bother to say anything or acknowledge me. This was really weird. I walked back into the kitchen. I thought about things, and then I decided to just leave. This whole situation was creeping me out, and I didn't know what was going on. So I walked over to the back door, left, and then walked back out to my car. When I did, I looked back at the house. I saw now that one of the lights was on in a front window which hadn't been before. The woman was looking out of that window and staring at me from inside. It just really creeped me out. I got back inside of my car and drove home. After that, I went and bought a cell phone from the store. This story takes place back when I was in college. I attended a large university that was a couple of hours from where I'm from. I had lived in the dorms with my roommate Rachel the previous year. The two of us decided to rent a small college house together for that upcoming school year. We were able to find a place that was cheap that we could afford, but it didn't come with any furniture, so we had to get some. Mostly we would look on Craigslist for either free or really cheap furniture. After getting the lease for the house in June, we got a couple of things over the summer. At one point, close to the start of the school year, I still needed a desk and was looking around Craigslist. I found one that I really liked, and it was also really cheap. So I reached out to the seller via text and let them know that I was interested. The seller responded, asking me several questions which I found odd. He asked for my name, age, and why I wanted to buy the desk, and he made it clear that his price was not negotiable. I figured that he was just super organized or something, and I had no interest in negotiating either. I mean, the desk was like $20, so it was already a good deal. I texted him the information, and he texted back saying that his name was John Smith, which also seemed odd. I mean, that kind of seems like a fake name to me. Anyways, he said that I could come by and buy the desk the following evening between 7 and 9 o'clock. He also said that he would help me bring the desk to my car. It was a pretty large desk, and I had cleared out the back of my SUV for furniture I got. I told John Smith that I would just bring my roommate and it would be fine. He said no, not to bring her, and that it was no problem for him to help. This seemed strange to me as well, which only made me want to bring Rachel with even more. So I told her about it, and she agreed that it seemed sketchy. I should have just forgot the whole thing and not got the desk, but it was a really nice desk and I wanted to get it. I was young and dumb, and I felt that nothing would go wrong. So the following evening, we drove to the address that was provided. We got there shortly after 7 o'clock, and it was a fairly average-looking neighborhood. It was maybe 10 minutes from campus and was pretty quiet, with many houses that had fairly large yards. I texted the owner, John Smith, that I was there. He told me to go inside the house and that the couch was inside. Rachel stayed in the car, and I told her that if I needed her help, I would let her know. I walked up to the front door and knocked. John Smith opened it and told me to come in. He appeared to be in his 60s, had a mustache and a sloppy-looking beard, and smelled like cigarettes and beer. I walked inside the house and was inside of the living room. I did not see the desk there, and John Smith informed me that it was in the basement. This made me want to leave immediately. If he knew he was selling it, why would he not at least bring it upstairs? I was annoyed but said okay. He claimed that he was sorry and that he just forgot to bring it upstairs. He said that he also needed help bringing it up the stairs. So against my better judgment, I followed him over to the basement door. He opened it and it revealed a staircase going down to an unfinished basement. It was really dark down there with not much light at all. This only made me more nervous. The man started walking down the stairs and I followed him. Down in the unfinished basement, there were some boxes and junk scattered around, but overall not too many things. When we got to the bottom of the stairs, we then walked a little ways into the basement. I looked around, and finally I spotted the desk that I was buying. It was completely backed against the corner of the basement, far away. This was odd because the listing for the desk showed it being in a room with natural light. I remembered that, so it had to have been upstairs. The man then started walking away. Not towards the desk though, but towards the stairs. He then started to walk up them. I was confused and also really nervous. As the man was making it to the top of the stairs, I didn't know what was going on, and just then I heard a sudden knocking from the front door of the house. It had to be Rachel. The man stopped on the stairs and looked back at me, and in an angry tone asked, "Who is that?" I was speechless in the moment, and without me even answering, the man quickly turned back and walked up the rest of the stairs and left the basement. I followed and quickly went up the stairs and made my way to the main floor. When we both got back upstairs, the man walked over to the front door. I was trying to quickly go over there as well. Sure enough, Rachel was standing there at the door. She was still knocking on it, and knocking rather loudly. The man opened up the door and angrily asked her who she was and what she wanted. Without letting her respond, he told her to leave. Rachel said she was my roommate, and I walked over and went past the guy. He angrily yelled at me and said that I was supposed to come alone. I didn't want to argue with the guy or anything. I just quickly walked past him, and Rachel and I then ran through the guy's yard and back to the car. He was yelling and cursing at us the whole time. Then we left and drove back home. By the time we returned, the Craigslist listing was deleted. I still made a report to Craigslist about him though. I'm guessing that John Smith was not his real name, but I do have his address. I never heard anything more, so I don't know if anything was done about him. I guess technically he didn't commit any crime, but it was sure as sketchy as can be. The fact that he wanted me to come alone was a major red flag. I should have never gone there, and I'm glad that Rachel came to the door when she did. She told me that she just had a bad feeling about it, and it seemed to be taking a long time. so she decided to just knock on the door and see how it was going. But when nobody answered the door for a while, she started loudly knocking. Thankfully, it worked. This is something that happened back when I was looking to buy a phone on Facebook Marketplace. For some background, I was a 21-year-old woman at the time and needed a new cell phone. My iPhone was old, outdated, and also out of storage. It only had 64 gigabytes on it. So I knew that I could get one cheap on Facebook Marketplace, as I didn't have the money to buy a brand new cell phone. I looked around and found one pretty quickly that seemed like a good deal. It was not too good to be true, but still a good price. I contacted the seller through Facebook and was told that it was still available. I was glad to hear that and said that I wanted to buy it. So the guy told me that I could come over and pick it up. This was the first red flag. I knew that it could be dangerous to go to a stranger's house to buy something, so I actually offered to meet at a public place instead. But the guy said no. He had an excuse though, saying that his car was broken and he just couldn't get out right now. I didn't want to pry into his personal business and figured that it would not be a big deal, so I said okay. We arranged for a time, which was the following evening. He gave me his address, which I drove to. It was an apartment complex about 15 minutes away. It was really old and crappy, one of the worst apartment buildings I've ever seen, and it was in a bad part of town too. So that was the second red flag. Still, I went on anyways. I let him know that I was there, and he buzzed me in. His apartment was on the 4th floor, and I took the stairs up because the elevator was broken. The whole building looked really bad. I got up to his door and knocked on it. He quickly opened it. He had sort of long, greasy-looking hair. He had big glasses and wore a large t-shirt and shorts. The guy gave me a bad vibe right off the bat. He told me to come in, and he seemed really awkward but also creepy. Some guys are just shy, and that's fine, but this guy was just awkward in a creepy way. He made small talk a bit with me, and I wasn't too creeped out yet, but his apartment was super messy. There was clutter everywhere, and it smelled bad. He asked me if I lived nearby and how old I was and a few other basic questions. I answered him with brief answers, but I didn't see the phone anywhere. I asked him if he had it, and he said yes. Then he told me to follow him, which I did not like. I was hoping that he would have just had it there. I followed him through the living room, down a small hallway, and then into a bedroom. As we were walking, he said out of nowhere maybe we should hang out sometime. I just kind of laughed and said, "Oh, maybe." Then we got to his bedroom, and he said he keeps all his phones in the closet. This was another weird thing. He opened this door, which was a pretty large closet. I saw inside there was a pile of like 100 cell phones on the ground. He had all sorts. iPhones, Androids, both old and new. They were just there on the floor in a pile and not organized at all. I asked him why he had so many phones. He said he likes to collect them, but also sell them and make a few bucks. Then he told me that he has his methods of getting them that some people may frown upon. I didn't know what he meant by this, but the way he said it seemed like he was insinuating that he stole them or something. I was just like, okay. Then he dug around and found the iPhone. He showed it to me and asked if this was the one that I wanted. I didn't even remember at that point anymore, but I just said yes. In reality though, I no longer wanted to buy it. I held the phone pretending to look at it. He told me it works fine and he had wiped it clean and jailbroke it. Then out of nowhere he asked me if I wanted to spend the night at his place. It was so random and also creepy. I said no thanks, I had plans. Then he said maybe another time, and I said yeah, maybe. Really, I just wanted to get out of there. I quickly thought on my feet. I said that I forgot the cash in my car and I would get it real quick. I acted like I was really disappointed and upset, and I think my acting was good because it seemed like he believed me. Really, I had the cash in my pocket. So I walked out and I said that I would be right back and then left. He stayed in his apartment. As soon as I got out, I sprinted out of the building, ran to my car, and drove home. I blocked him and got off of Facebook. Looking back at that, it was really creepy. I don't know what was going on there, but I'm glad I left when I did. When I was in college during my junior year, I lived in a house with another roommate. It was a 2-bedroom house, and my roommate Bianca was good friends with me. We met freshman year, and our senior year we were going to be living as roommates in an apartment instead of a house. The house was cool overall, but the apartment was going to be a little nicer. I remember that we got this crappy couch from Bianca's parents that we had when we lived in the house. We wanted to get rid of it when we were moving to the apartment. The couch was pretty large, and for the apartment we were not going to be bringing it over. So towards the end of our lease, a few days before we were going to move into the apartment, we decided to give the couch away. It was in pretty good shape, and if someone wanted it, they could take it. If not, we would just throw it away. We listed it for free on Craigslist and took some pictures of it and stuff. A few days went by and there was no interest. Then I remembered that Bianca told me someone was coming over to take it later on in the day. I asked who, and she just said some guy. Bianca had made the listing and was kind of taking care of things, so I just said okay, and I was glad we were getting rid of it. So sometime that afternoon, I heard Bianca say that the guy was going to be there soon. I went down into the living room and we had the couch there as well as some chairs and a coffee table and some other stuff. There were boxes around because we were preparing to move. The couch was large and would be at least a 2-person job to move it, so I was going to help. A few minutes later, the doorbell rang and a man was there on the front step. We opened the door and let him inside to see the couch. He said that he had a pickup truck and we looked outside and saw a pretty large one. The man then started looking at the couch. He went around it to all corners and seemed to be measuring to see if it would fit in his truck. We made some basic average small talk about stuff during this time. Overall, he seemed like a pretty normal guy for the most part. Then we helped him pick up the couch and carry it out the door and to his truck. After that, he left and our couch was finally gone. Now, fast forward to later that night. It was about 9 or 10 o'clock. I remember that Bianca told me that the guy who got the couch had just texted her again. He asked her if he had forgotten his wallet at our house by chance. My first reaction was, how on earth would he forget his wallet in our house? I thought there was no way. He was barely inside and didn't pay us or anything. Still, we looked around a little. The guy texted again saying he thought it might have fallen out of his pocket on the floor while he was lifting the couch or something. We looked and at first still didn't see anything. Then I moved one of the chairs in the living room to see a small black wallet. It was like directly underneath the center of the chair. I really have no idea how it could get that far underneath if it had just simply fallen out of his pocket. But nevertheless, it was there. I looked inside of it and there was no driver's license. However, there was 3 $1 bills and what appeared to be a debit card. That was it. Really not much for a wallet. So Bianca texted him that we had it and he said that he would be there in about 10 minutes. Now this is when things get really weird. Like just 2 or 3 minutes after that, I went to turn on the outside light to the front step. When I did, I saw what looked like the man walking sort of in our yard. He was barely in my sight and kind of walking between our yard and the neighbors. I moved to get a better look, but he had walked away. I only saw him for like a second. I didn't see his truck parked in the street or anything though. Then I went up to my bedroom to get a better look at the side yard and backyard. When I did, I actually saw the guy again. He walked around to the backyard and then was sort of looking at the house. It was really creepy. The lighting back there was not good at all, so I could honestly barely see him. Bianca came up and was looking as well. We were asking each other what the man was doing. Bianca was so creeped out that she said she didn't even want to give him his wallet back anymore. We were seriously considering calling the police. Then we noticed the man walk out of the end of the backyard and into the neighbors behind us' backyard. So after that, he was out of our sight. Then maybe 5 minutes later, there was a knock at the front door. Bianca and I went down and looked out of the living room window to see the guy standing on the front step. He knocked on the door again moments later. Bianca went over to the door but did not open it. She said from the other side that we had his wallet. The man then asked for the door to be opened so that he could come in. Bianca said no, she would just hand him the wallet and he would leave. The man did not seem happy with this. He seemed surprised and asked what the problem was. We didn't want to let him know that we saw him in the yard for fear of how he might react. Bianca just said that he needed to take his wallet and then leave. I remember the man started saying how he was going to give us both a cash reward for giving him his wallet back if we would let him in. I was thinking, what is he going to give us, $1 each? Because there were only $3 in the wallet. Maybe he had more money on him, but nevertheless, I didn't really believe it. In fact, this only creeped us out more. Bianca did not open or unlock the door. Instead, she just took the wallet and walked over to a window. Then she opened it up and threw the wallet out in the direction of the man. She said, "There's your wallet, now go." Then she closed the window quickly. The man picked up the wallet, but knocked on the door again, saying that he wanted to give us a cash reward. That's when Bianca yelled at him and threatened to call the police. Finally, the man left. We were both very creeped out by his behavior. We stayed up late, but thankfully he did not return. Days later, we moved into our apartment and had no more problems with the guy. Looking back, Bianca and I both think that the man planted a fake wallet under the chair. He obviously wanted an excuse to go back to our place. Why, I don't know. I was selling a desk on Facebook Marketplace a few years ago. It was a pretty nice desk in my opinion, and I had bought it from IKEA just 2 years prior. However, I was going to be moving and I decided to get rid of it. During this time, I lived in a smaller house by myself. I remember that after I made the listing for the desk, it took a couple of days before I got any responses. When I did, I got a message from a man named Charlie. He said that he wanted to buy the desk. There wasn't a whole lot of conversation between us other than that. I was happy that somebody wanted to buy it, and I made sure that he was good with the price, which he said that he was. I thought the price was reasonable, so I was glad to hear that, and then I gave him my address. We agreed that he would come by the next evening at about 5 o'clock. And when the next evening rolled around, I had the desk just inside of my front door for Charlie to come and buy. He got there at about 5, and I let him inside of my house. Charlie was skinny with somewhat curly blondish hair. He was wearing a sweatshirt. After we said hi to each other, I showed Charlie the desk and I told him that I could help him take it to his car. Charlie went up close to the desk and looked at it. After a short time, he told me that the desk did not look like it did in the pictures. I asked him what he meant. I was very confused because it was exactly the same as the pictures. I had taken them just days prior when I had listed the desk, and I really hadn't touched it since. Charlie said that it just wasn't how he thought it would be. Then he said that he decided not to buy it. I was disappointed, but I said okay. Then he turned and left. I was confused by what he had said. I'm not sure what exactly he was expecting, because in my opinion, the desk was just as it was advertised in the listing. I decided to just move on, and hopefully somebody else would want to buy it. So the night went on, and I ended up staying up pretty late. It was nearly midnight. I was in the other room, and I heard the sound suddenly of somebody trying to open the front door. When I heard this, I walked over and looked out of a front window. I saw a man standing there, wearing a hat that was mostly covering his face. But I then realized that this was Charlie. I didn't know what he was doing. After literally trying to open my front door, he then walked away, but he didn't leave. Instead, he walked around to the back side of the house. He tried that door, which thankfully was locked. After that, things were quiet for a bit. Then he returned to the front. This time, he actually knocked on the front door of the house, but I was not going to answer it. After being at the front door, he moved to several windows. It seemed like he was trying to look inside. I had covers for most of them, but I could still see his shadow on the other side. After he was still in my yard prowling around for that long, I decided to call the police. I told them the whole story, and within 10 minutes, an officer was there. Meanwhile, Charlie had stayed there the whole time. When the police arrived, he tried running, but was quickly caught. He did not break in, and I think he ended up getting off for the most part. I have to think, though, that he was trying to find a good place to break into my house. I'm really glad that he didn't.
This was something that happened several years ago now. I was in college, going into my junior year. Up until that point, I lived in the dorms, which was required for underclassmen in my university. For my junior year, I was moving into an off-campus house. I was very excited and would be living with 3 other girls who I was good friends with. The house was a lot of space. It had 4 bedrooms and a bathroom upstairs, and a kitchen, living room, and bathroom on the main floor. It also had a basement. None of us really had any furniture, so I went on Facebook Marketplace to find some. I knew that you could usually get free furniture on there, or furniture for really cheap. I didn't care if it was used or not the best quality, because we would likely only be using it for 2 years. After looking around on Facebook Marketplace for a while, I found some good options. One that I really liked was a couch that was free and just on the other side of town. The ad said that it was like new and free because the owner had gotten a new couch. The pictures were good quality and there appeared to be nothing wrong with it at all. Now, this was early in the summer, right after we got the house, and it had no furniture in it at all. I was the only one of the roommates who was there at the time, and I decided that I would get this couch for free for us. The location where the couch was just over 5 minutes away. I asked the owner if it was available, and a man named Ryan responded and said that it was. Based on his profile picture, he He appeared to be in his 40s or 50s and looked like an average guy for the most part. I arranged to come and pick it up that night at 7 p.m. I got lucky and was able to borrow a pickup truck from a friend at college so that I could get the couch. It never would have fit inside of my car. So when the time came, I drove to the address. When I got there, it seemed to be in a pretty average neighborhood for being near a college campus. The houses were all old-looking and fairly small. I told the owner that I was there through Facebook and then walked up to the front door and rang the doorbell. Ryan answered the door quickly. He was tall and skinny and looked just like his picture. He was friendly and invited me inside. But after getting inside, things quickly turned sketchy. When I got inside of Ryan's house and took a few steps in, he quickly went behind me and stood right in front of the front door. I also didn't see the couch anywhere. As Ryan stood there, I expected him to tell me where it was or something, but instead, he started making small talk. He asked me if I went to the college and what my major was and stuff. At first, it just seemed friendly, but then he asked me where I lived, if I lived alone, and if I was single. Things like that, and after several minutes of this conversation, I brought up the couch. I thought he was being kind of weird. I asked him where it was, and he told me that it was just down in his basement. This disappointed me. The pictures online did not appear as though they were taken in the basement. I specifically remembered seeing natural sunlight, and it looked like it was in the living room, not an underground basement. And if he knew he was getting rid of it, why wouldn't he bring it upstairs? Ryan then said that he would have brought the couch upstairs, but he couldn't lift it by himself. I guess that made sense, as he was a pretty skinny dude. But the couch was not one of those huge ones. It was sort of on the smaller side for couches. He stayed standing right in front of the front door, almost like he was blocking it. He then pointed to the basement door, which was maybe 10 feet from where he was standing. I walked over to it, and then he said, "You can lead the way." I opened up the basement door and looked down the stairs. Suddenly, my sketchy feeling from him that I had got a lot worse. From where I was standing at the top of the stairs, the basement looked really dark and unfinished. The stairs were very old-looking, and the floors were just concrete. I saw a light switch and turned it on, but nothing happened. Ryan now moved and was standing right behind me. He said, "Oh yeah, the light bulb's burnt out." I really didn't want to go down there. I quickly thought of a reason to get out of there and away from him. Ryan said, "Go ahead," after I had been just standing at the top of the stairs for a few seconds. I then said to him, "Actually, I really have to use the restroom." I turned around and said that I had better go. Ryan didn't move and told me that there was a bathroom I could use in the basement. I said that I would much rather use one upstairs. Then he told me that he had another one on that level that I could use. I wanted to just leave, but I panicked and said okay. He said that it was right down the hall and pointed in the direction of it. As he did this, he moved back to right in front of the front door like he had been before. I walked in the direction of the hallway as he stayed where he was. I found the bathroom and went inside of it. I was panicking and didn't know what to do. I started to call one of my friends who was on campus when I heard Ryan walking closer. It was very quiet, but I heard the floor creak a little ways away. I did not hear footsteps, but I could just tell that he was walking closer. Everything was completely silent in the house, other than the light sounds of creaking on the floor. I tried not to make any noise. It seemed as though Ryan was very slowly and quietly walking closer to me. I had locked the bathroom door, but I didn't know what he was doing. Soon, I could tell that Ryan was right outside of the bathroom door on the other side. I texted my friend as quietly as I could about what was going on. Then, I very quietly ducked down and looked on the floor. Underneath the small gap at the bottom of the door, I saw Ryan's shoes. He was standing right there on the other side. I carefully walked towards the back of the bathroom without making a sound. Then, I flushed the toilet. When I did, I heard Ryan walking away. He was moving back to the front end of the house. I pretended to run the sink. Then I turned it off and left the bathroom. Ryan was back standing by the front door, but from this hallway, I couldn't see him, and he couldn't see me. I looked to the other side of the hallway. There was what appeared to be a back door to the house that led outside. Instead of walking back to the living room where Ryan was, I went to the back door. Then I opened it and went outside. As soon as I made it out, I sprinted around the house and for the street where my car was parked. I didn't stop to look and made it inside the truck and then drove off. When I did, I looked to the house and didn't see Ryan at all. I made it back to my house safely and felt lucky to have gotten out of there. When I went back on Facebook, Ryan had blocked me and I couldn't find the listing. Looking back, I don't know what Ryan's intentions were, but he was really sketchy and creepy.
I had recently gotten a new car and had to sell my old one. I had bought it used, and it was kind of old, so I listed it on Facebook Marketplace. I was told that was a good place to sell a car. It seemed better than Craigslist, which always seemed a little bit sketchy to me. So after listing the car, I did receive a few messages about it in the first couple of days, but none of them really went anywhere. Then I would get the first serious interest. It was a man by the name of Ben on Facebook. He messaged me and said that he wanted to buy my car. We talked briefly, and basically the guy wanted to meet up and look at the car as soon as possible. I suggested a nearby shopping center parking lot for us to meet. At this point, it was sometime in the afternoon, and Ben wanted to meet that same night. I said that would be fine, and we agreed on 8:30 p.m. in the back of the parking lot. The shopping center had quite a few stores and a very large parking lot. Most of it was usually always empty. It was maybe 10 minutes from my house. So I ended up going there expecting to meet Ben, who was seeming to be a serious buyer. I arrived slightly early, and after getting there, let Ben know that I was there. Then I just waited. Some time went by, and 8:30 came and went. Ben still hadn't showed up. I messaged him, asking where he was. He didn't respond though. I was getting frustrated. It appeared as though he had changed his mind about the car without telling me. After waiting past 9 o'clock, I finally left and started driving back home. About 10 minutes later, I arrived. At the time, I lived alone in a smaller house. As I was driving down my street, which is usually very quiet, I noticed headlights quickly coming up behind me. I remember thinking to myself, that person was going a little bit fast for this street. By the time I reached my driveway, they were right on my tail. So I pulled into my driveway, expecting them to drive past, but then the car that was behind me pulled in right after. Now my driveway was pretty short, but sort of wide. It could barely take two cars in front of each other. The car I usually drove was in the garage, and I was driving the one that I was trying to sell. So after this car pulled in behind me, I could only see the bright headlights shining in. I had a bad feeling about it. I wasn't expecting anyone at my house, and had no clue as to who this could be. But then I got the idea that maybe it was the guy from Facebook Marketplace. I knew that I couldn't get out of my car, so I turned to the right a little. Then I saw the car behind me start to turn to the right. I didn't know what exactly to do. I wanted to leave, but I felt like my car might be stuck there. The car behind me then started honking. I did not recognize the vehicle and was 100% sure that I didn't know this person. I then turned my wheel and just hit the gas. My car narrowly missed my garage, but I made it. Then I started to make a U-turn, but the car ended up going into the grass of my front yard off of the driveway. When I did this, the car behind me started backing up and turning to try to keep up with me. I was able to make it out of the driveway and started going down my road as quickly as I could. The car behind me was soon able to follow. I drove to the end of my street and then went through some residential streets for a short time. Then eventually I made it to a busier road. I traveled on that for a while, and then sometime over there is when the car behind me stopped following. I'm not sure when, because I was looking forward for several minutes, and there were also some other cars out on that road, but sometime whoever was following me stopped. Then I carefully went back home. Luckily, I didn't see the car again. I just have a feeling that that was Ben from Facebook Marketplace. He was probably just trying to follow me home and never even wanted to look at the car. Maybe he was going to try to steal the car or rob me. That's my best guess. But when I went back onto Facebook, he had blocked me. I tried reporting it to Facebook Marketplace, but I'm not sure what could really be done. After that though, I haven't used Facebook Marketplace since. A couple of years ago, I decided to use Facebook Marketplace to try to sell my car. I had gotten a new car after getting a good job and decided to sell my old one. For many years, I had used sites such as Craigslist to buy used cars, and I had sold a couple there as well. I chose to use Facebook Marketplace this time to sell, and one of my good friends told me how easy it was for him. I had a 2014 Chevy Cruze that I was selling, and I was looking to get $8,000 for it, which based on my research was a fair price.
I figured I would get offers lower than the asking price, so I was willing to sell it for less, but not by a lot. I didn't get a whole lot of interest immediately after listing the car though. I just got one person asking if it was still available, which I responded yes it was, but I never got another message from them after that. I also got a message from a guy giving me a completely lowball offer of $1,000 for it. I didn't even respond to it, but the guy then messaged me again. I told the man that was nowhere close to what I was asking, and I wasn't going to entertain those kind of offers. He kept on messaging me though, and was practically begging me to look at the car. Eventually, I had to block him because it was just a huge waste of my time. I didn't really get much interest other than that though, but it was only a couple of days, so I figured some people would eventually. The next day, somebody messaged me. A guy named Dave asked me if the car was still available. I said yes, and he told me he was willing to pay full price, and then asked me if he could look at it and most likely buy it later that night. I was happy to hear this and told him yes. We agreed to meet that night at a nearby Walmart in the back of the parking lot, and Dave could look at the car. When the time came, I drove to the Walmart in my Chevy Cruze and had it all cleaned out and ready to sell if possible. Dave messaged me that he was on his way, and eventually I saw an older-looking black car drive up and park next to me. The man then got out and introduced himself as Dave. He was probably about 5'9", skinny, and looked to be around 30 years old. He wore worn-out jeans and a hoodie. He introduced himself to me and said he really liked the car and was willing to buy it today. I showed him the outside of the car and asked him if he wanted to take it for a test drive. Dave said sure, and then he got in the driver's seat, and I got in the passenger's. We took a short test drive around the block, and then Dave drove back to the parking lot and parked next to my car. When the drive was over, he said, "Yeah, I'll take it," and then he said he had the cash in his car. It was sort of cold out, and we got out of my car and the guy walked over to his. He said I could get inside his car to stay warm, and we both got inside so we could get the money. Once we were inside the man's car, he reached into the side storage compartment of his driver's door and pulled out a wad of cash. He then handed it to me and suddenly said this was the best he could do. I looked and saw it was only $800. I handed it back to him and laughed, thinking it was a joke. But when I saw the man's face, he was really serious. He then admitted to messaging me the day before. He said he had another account, and he was the guy asking to pay me $1,000. He said he really wanted my car, and I could either take the money or he was going to take my car. I then realized this man still had my keys. I told him I needed at least $7,000 for it, and the man responded he could only give $800. I told the man no and asked him to give me my keys back. The man didn't respond and instead put his car into drive, locked the doors, and then began driving. As we started off, I told the man to stop, and he responded by telling me not to try anything because he was dangerous. He drove out to the back of Walmart and then onto the street. Once we were on the street, he immediately exited for the freeway. The man kept looking over at me just about every second. Once we were on the freeway, the man held out his hand and demanded my phone. I didn't answer him, but he shouted and said he would drive into the oncoming traffic if I didn't give him my phone. I reluctantly handed my phone to him, and he then put it in his pocket away from me. We drove on the freeway for about 10 minutes, and then the man took an exit to a very quiet road that appeared to not have any kind of businesses on it. We drove, I would guess, a mile down the road before the man stopped the car suddenly on the side of the road. Then he unlocked the door and screamed at me to get out now. I was more than happy to leave his car, even though I had no clue where I was. He then drove away once I exited his car and sped off into the night. I was now lost on the side of a random quiet road with no phone and no keys to my car. I walked along the side of the road in the freezing cold for probably an hour. Occasionally, a car would pass by, but none of them stopped. At last, after probably an hour, I made it to a small gas station where I was able to use a phone to call the police. I was picked up by an officer and brought to the Walmart parking lot where my car was now gone. I filled out a police report and got a ride home. After that, I never saw my car again, but luckily, I had insurance. I just hope the guy was caught.
Years back, I had an old Impreza that was my car. I got a new car, so I decided to sell the Impreza on Craigslist. This was before Facebook Marketplace was popular, and to me, Craigslist seemed like the best option for getting the most money I could for my car. If I traded it into a dealer or a dealership, I would probably get next to nothing, and I already had another car. So I took some pictures and then listed it online. The way Craigslist works, or at least worked back then, was you would create a simple listing and your phone number would be at the bottom. Anybody could contact you about what you were selling, either a text or a call. So the first few days after I made the listing, I wasn't getting much interest. The car was sort of old, but it worked fine and ran well. I thought that maybe the asking price was too high, but I kept the listing up and didn't change the price because I wasn't in a huge hurry to sell. I did get, I think it was 2 texts and 1 call, but each time they stopped responding pretty quick and never seemed that interested. Then, after the car had been up for like a week, I got another text about it. The person said, "Is your Impreza still for sale?" I said, yes it is. Then the person said that they were interested in it. I asked if they wanted to look at the car and maybe test drive it, and the person said yes. So I asked when to try to arrange a time. I knew nothing about this person because they didn't give me a name or anything. However, after I asked when they wanted to look at the car, they stopped responding. For several days, I got no texts at all. I was disappointed and figured that they just lost interest in the car for whatever reason. For the next few days after that, I got no texts or calls regarding the car. I was starting to forget about it because, like I said, I wasn't in a huge hurry to sell it. So now it was like a week after I had last heard from the person, or anybody else for that matter, about my car. I lived alone at the time in a smaller house that I was renting. It was nighttime, sort of late, about 10 o'clock, and I was in the living room. I got a text, and it was from the same person who had been texting with me about the car. He sent a picture of the car for sale as it sat in my driveway right by my house. This was not the picture from the Craigslist listing. This looked like a picture that had been taken about right now. The place that the person had taken the picture from was well in my driveway and on my property. I looked at the picture and was very confused. I finally texted back and said, "Are you at my house right now?" Pretty quickly the person responded saying, "I'm here to look at the car. Where are you?" I knew that I had never arranged the details of a time or date to look at the car with this person. I also realized that I had never given them my address, and it wasn't on the listing either. Plus, it was late at night for crying out loud. I asked the person how they got my address. They did not respond to this. Moments later, I heard a knock at the front door. I was not within view to see the door or out any of the windows. Plus, they were thankfully all covered entirely. I was curious as to who was there, but I didn't really want to open the door. I stood there trying to decide what my best option was. Then the person tried opening my front door, which was locked. I tried calling them on the phone, but they declined the call. The knocking at the door got louder. By now, I was really creeped out. I went over to a front window and very carefully looked out of it. I saw some guy standing there on the front step. He was sort of large, but I couldn't see his face. It was really dark out, so I didn't get much. Then, finally, he turned and started walking away. I moved away from the window again so that he wouldn't see me. A short time later, I heard a loud noise, like something was being hit. Then I heard a car driving away down the street. I went and looked out the window, and he was gone. I went to text the guy again asking what that was all about, but he blocked my number. The next day, I went outside and saw a visible dent in the door of the Impreza. I'm pretty sure that the guy kicked it or hit it somehow, and that's the sound that I heard before he left. It made me angry, and I reported his number to Craigslist. This incident prompted me to get security cameras. It also made me remove my Craigslist listing, and I ended up selling my car to a dealer. Since that experience, the man never returned. I have used Craigslist a couple of times since, but not much, and not to buy or sell a vehicle. If anybody out there listening uses Craigslist or Facebook Marketplace, please be careful. A few years ago, I was selling my bike on Facebook Marketplace. And when I say bike, I mean bicycle, not motorcycle. This one was nice though. It was like $1,000 bike and in great condition. I live near the city and I had just got it a few years prior. I used it a lot, not only to get around, but also for exercise. However, I now had a car and the bike was taking up too much space. So I listed it at $700, but was realistically going to accept as low as $500 for it. For the first couple of days, there was not much interest. Then finally a guy messaged me and said that he would take the bike. I found it interesting how he didn't ask if it was available still or try to negotiate. All he said was, "I'll take it." This was good though, because maybe he would pay the full price. So I arranged a time and location for us to complete the sale, and he agreed to it all. I chose the location as a shopping center parking lot not too far away from my work that was kind of on the way home. I told the guy when I usually got out of work, and I said I would let him know when I was off and he could head over then. He said he was not that far away and that was fine with him. So I got off work a little late but was done by about 6 o'clock. Then I texted the guy and I drove to the location. I had the bike in the back of my car, which luckily fit because I have an SUV, but I did have to take the front wheel off. So when I got to the shopping center, it was very quiet. The parking lot was huge, a lot larger than is needed for the few stores that are there. The main store is a grocery store, and there weren't really any cars that were near me. I got out, and as I waited for the man, put the wheel back on the bike. He said he was on his way, but I was still waiting a sort of long time. Then, kind of out of nowhere, I saw this guy come walking through the parking lot. He was about average height, skinny, pretty young looking, and had a buzz cut. His clothes were baggy, and overall the guy seemed a little bit sketchy. I wasn't quite sure where he had come from, but he introduced himself to me and shook my hand. He seemed really friendly right off the bat, and it put me at ease. After a little bit of small chit-chat, the guy saw the bike and said that it looked great. He said how he had been looking for a nice bike to ride around the city. The guy told me that he needed a means of transportation. He said he had the cash on him, and he just wanted to sit on the bike and see how it felt. I told him to go ahead. I trusted him. Well, the guy got onto the bike and said that he wanted to test it out for a second. Then he very quickly started riding away through the parking lot about as fast as he could. I realized that he was stealing my bike. I very quickly ran to my car, got in, and started it up. I saw the guy still going through the parking lot. Because things were so quiet, I was able to quickly drive through the parking lot after him. I saw which street he was going down. Now, this area is a little outside the city. This meant that there were not as many places the guy could go, and the roads were not quite as busy. So it would be easier for me to follow the man, and he didn't have a lot of alleyways he could ride down or sidewalks. It was pretty much just roads and some businesses, but off the roads was either parking lots or grass. There were some sidewalks, but they just went along the roads. So, as nice as my bike was, I could obviously go much faster than the guy in my car. I caught up to him as he rode my bike to the end of that street. I honked at him, but he ignored me. Then he turned, and I turned as well. I thought about calling the cops, but I figured I would follow him for a while and see where he was going, and hoped that maybe he would give it up. After turning, the guy looked back at me and then tried to go faster. I was still able to keep up with him though. We went down that street for a while and then turned again. He turned quickly a couple of times and I nearly lost him. I obviously couldn't make quick turns like he could. Then he also went through a red light, which luckily he didn't get hit by a car, but I had to wait for the light. When it turned, I kept following him. I caught back up, and a while later he turned off into a neighborhood. This neighborhood was not very nice, but it was very large. The whole chase had been going for like 5 minutes now. He rode down one street and then turned. I nearly lost him. Then he went down another street, and just as I turned on it, I saw him going up a driveway. I watched him ride the bike into the front yard, and then he got off, opened the front door to a house, and brought the bike inside the house. All the houses and yards on this street were small and not very nice, and there were quite a few of them. I drove down the street and kept my eye on the house, and then I pulled into the driveway. Then I got out, walked up to the front door, and started knocking on it. There was no answer at first, which did not surprise me. I kept banging on the door though, and I yelled at him to open. I threatened to involve the police. Nobody answered still, but I was not going away. Then, finally, after like 5 minutes, I heard someone inside. They walked over to the front door and then opened it, but the man was not there. It was a different guy who looked annoyed and asked me what my problem was and why I kept banging on the door. I told him that I saw a guy who stole my bike enter the house. He claimed that he didn't know what I was talking about. I asked him if he lived there and he said yes, this was his house. I asked him who else lived there and he claimed no one did. I told him that I knew I saw a guy go into the house there. The guy claimed that he knew nothing about it and that I had to leave. I didn't want to, but I couldn't barge into the house. The guy slammed the door in my face and locked it. I knew that guy probably was just the other guy's friend and obviously was covering for him. I walked back to my car in the driveway thinking of what I should do next. I could stay there and keep harassing these guys, or I could call the police. Right as I was arriving back at my car though, I heard something behind me. I looked and saw the guy who stole my bike. He was coming out of the small backyard that the house had. Then he stopped and threw a rock at me. It missed, but I quickly got back in my car to protect myself. He then threw another rock which hit my car.
Then he threw another. I backed out of the driveway, and when I was leaving, I saw the guy turn and run off into the backyard and out of my sight. Then I called the cops. I wasn't going to sit there and let him throw rocks at me. The cops got to the house like 10 minutes later. I told them everything that happened, and they knocked on the door of the house. It turned out that the guy who answered the door for me did live there, and he rented the house with a roommate. But neither of the people on the lease was the guy that stole my bike. He was a friend of them though, so the guy was lying to me. I guess the guy who stole my bike was just staying at the house or something, or maybe he was just friends of theirs and decided to go there after stealing it. Nevertheless, he was gone now, and he left on my bike. I went home disappointed and figured that I had lost out. I was hopeful that the police would find my bike, but I didn't really think it would happen realistically. I mean, the guy could be anywhere by then, and it was just a bike. It's not like it was some $1 million car. However, as a try, I scoured both Facebook Marketplace and Craigslist as well as eBay for my bike over the next few days. I thought there was a good chance he might try to sell it quick, seeing as though it was hot. But there was also a good chance that he would use it to flee the city, or he would hide it. However, 4 days later, I saw a listing on Craigslist. It was 100% my bike. The city was the same one that the guy had been in, and it was the exact same make and model that my bike was. I told my friend Jake about it, and he texted the guy saying that he wanted to buy the bike. The guy was selling it at $450, which would guarantee to sell quick. When Jake texted him, thankfully he hadn't sold it yet and agreed to sell it to Jake. So the next night was the arranged sale. I drove Jake there and we knew what we had to do. The meeting point was another parking lot across town. When we got there, sure enough, there the guy was with my bike. It was the same man who stole it. I parked kind of far away and made sure that he wouldn't see me. Jake got out and I was really nervous. I saw them shake hands as I stayed hidden in the car. Then Jake pretended to look at the bike. At once, he hopped on it and took off. The guy started running after him, but Jake was gone. I started the car and began driving out of the parking lot. Jake went down the street and the guy could not keep up. I saw him stop running and the man was now walking along the side of the road. I drove by the guy, honked my horn, and waved goodbye as he gave me the double bird. Then I drove a few blocks over and picked up Jake and my bike. I'm glad that I got it back, and I decided not to sell the bike anymore. I still have it, and I can't believe that we were able to steal it back. However, I would not recommend doing something like that. It could have been dangerous. Looking back, it probably would have just been a better idea to notify the police of the bike being for sale. Either way, I'm glad that the man didn't get away with it.
I had recently moved into a new house. The house was in a nice area, but surrounded by rather sketchy neighborhoods. The previous person who lived there left behind a lot of stuff, and I finally decided to list some of the things to try to get rid of them because I needed the space. One of the things I had listed was a 20-inch flat-screen TV that was like 10 years old. I only wanted $20 for it, but I mostly just wanted it gone. I had previous strange experiences selling things on Facebook Marketplace, so I already didn't like selling things this way as it was. But I didn't feel like going to a pawn shop or anything, since I probably wouldn't get anything for it there. So I listed the TV on Facebook Marketplace, including a picture of it turned on. I also specifically stated that this was a cash-only sale. In an hour, I got a message from a guy named James. He said, "Hi, is this still available?" I replied saying, "Yes, it is." Then he said, "I want to come and pick it up. Is it still available?" I had just said that it was available, so I repeated again, "Yes, it was." Then the guy sent me a message asking if I used Cash App. I was immediately sketchy about this because I now felt like this guy was likely a scammer. I responded, "No, it's cash only sale, as I stated in the description." The guy then asked if I could deliver, to which I said no. I mean, it's a $20 TV, and you seriously want me to deliver it? I was getting a bit annoyed at this point. Then the guy tried offering me $15 since I couldn't deliver it, and I said no, the price is firm, so you can either take it or leave it. The guy didn't message me back for a bit, but later he did and said that he wanted to come and get it, so I messaged him my address, and he said that he was on his way. It was now around 8 p.m., and I had work the next day. I waited in the parlor and was watching out the window, and the guy messaged me saying that he was almost there. I noticed a red Chevy Volt drive back and forth by my house a few times before disappearing, and I asked him if that was him. He didn't reply, and instead sent me an image of a MapQuest showing directions from his location, which was about a mile up the road, to my house. At this point, I was annoyed, and I figured this guy was either casing my house or scamming me, or maybe both. I messaged the guy, "I'm done with you, good night." I then went upstairs, shut off my phone, and got into bed for the night. Around 2 a.m., I awoke to the sound of glass breaking. I thought maybe my cat had knocked something over, so I groggily got up and went out the door and then turned on the hallway light. I also turned on the parlor light before heading downstairs to the parlor. As I got halfway down the stairs, I saw a man in the living room tearing out the TV in the media cabinet. I froze for a moment, then ran upstairs and pressed the panic button on the HMI for my security system, which was right outside my bedroom door. This, of course, set off the alarm on the home. I then went inside my bedroom and closed the door, and grabbed the landline off the dresser and called 911. When the police arrived, the man was gone. He had broken the glass on my front door and let himself in, and he had stolen not only the TV I was trying to sell, but also the one in the living room, which was a 10-year-old piece of crap anyways. I remembered my weird experience with the guy on Facebook Marketplace the previous day, and I got my phone out and turned it on to look up the guy's profile. To my horror, a long string of messages awaited me. They read, "Yo, I'm here. Hey, where are you? I want the TV." Well, I guess I'll just have to come in and get it myself, followed by a picture of my front door. I gave all this information to the police, and they left. I also reported what happened to Facebook as well, but I knew they probably wouldn't care. They eventually caught the guy a few days later, after he tried to sell my TVs to a pawn shop. He was charged with breaking and entering, burglary, and some other stuff. He got 15 years in jail from what I was told. After that, I had security cameras installed, and I never sold anything online again. I used to use Craigslist from time to time. I've bought and sold several things on it over the years. But something crazy happened several years ago. I was selling my PS4 and decided to list it on Craigslist. This was back when the PS4 was the newest PlayStation and the 5 hadn't come out yet, so I would be able to get a decent amount of money for it. The PlayStation worked perfectly fine, and I also had some games that I was selling along with it. I took pictures and then listed them on Craigslist and hoped that somebody would buy it soon. Within a day, I got a response from somebody. A guy texted me introducing himself as Darren. He told me that he wanted to buy the PlayStation and asked when he could get it. I told him he could any time, and I even made sure that the price was good with him, and he said yes. He asked for my address, but I said that we could meet at this local strip mall. I wanted to conduct business in a public space. Darren agreed to this, and we arranged to meet the next evening at 7 o'clock. So I packed up the PlayStation and headed out to the strip mall. It was pretty close by, and Darren arrived just minutes after me. We met in the back of the parking lot. Luckily, things were pretty quiet there that night. After meeting Darren, I showed him the PlayStation and asked him for the money. Darren told me that he didn't have the money right then, but that he would give it to me when he got paid the next week. I was angry when I heard that. I said no. If he didn't have the money, I wasn't going to give him the PS4. Darren seemed confused and upset, as if I was just going to give it to him. I told him that when he got paid, he could come and buy it then. But Darren demanded to get it now and claimed that he promised he would pay me. Of course, I was not that stupid, and I still said no. I put the PlayStation back in my car and told Darren to text me when he had the money. Darren was still trying to get me to give it to him though. I closed the door and got inside my car as Darren was still trying to talk to me. When I got inside of my car, he started knocking at my driver's window and telling me to listen to him. I just ignored him though. I told him to move, but he refused. So then I just started backing out to leave. As soon as I did this, Darren finally left my car, but only to go to his vehicle. He then got inside of his car, and I thought nothing of it. But as I was leaving and driving out of the parking lot pulling onto the road, I saw Darren's car come whipping up behind me quickly. When I got onto the road, he was right behind me. As I started driving home, I feared that he would follow me, so I took this random turn, and sure enough, Darren did as well. I could not believe that this guy was going to follow me because I wouldn't fall for what was likely his scam attempt. I made a few more random turns, which Darren did as well. He was following extremely close to me, so close that I was afraid that his car might bump mine. His driving also seemed to be a little bit erratic. I wanted to call the cops, but then I had the idea to just drive to them. I quickly got directions to the nearest police station and then drove there. Darren followed me the entire way until he realized where we were going. I went into the parking lot and he drove away. I decided to report what happened, but I don't think anything could really be done. After that, I went home. Darren texted me that night, cursing me out, and I blocked his number. I ended up selling the PlayStation to someone else a few days later. After that, though, I haven't done any buying or selling on Craigslist. I know that most of the time it works out fine, but I just don't want to take the chance and deal with any more sketchy people like Darren.
A couple of years back, I attempted to sell my car on Craigslist. I was told by a friend it was a good place to buy and sell cars, and I knew that if I wanted to get the most money I could for the car, I would have to sell it that way. I listed the car at what I thought was a fair price. It was a 2009 Ford Fiesta with a little over 100,000 miles on it. Nothing was really wrong with the car, but I wanted something newer and I also wanted something a little bit larger. So I took some pictures and I listed it on Craigslist. I hadn't had any experience on Craigslist to that point. I thought that the website looked kind of archaic when I first went on it, and for some reason it made me think that it was kind of sketchy. But I thought, hundreds of people use this every day and it works fine. So I went ahead with the listing. After posting the car online that I was selling, the next day I got a response. The way that it would work was that your phone number would go on the listing at the bottom. People who are interested would then text you. The first text that I received asked if the car was still available. I said yes. Then whoever this was asked to come over and look at it. I knew better than to invite some random stranger to my house though. I said that we should meet someplace else. The person responded saying no, they wanted to come to my house and look at the car. Immediately that seemed suspicious to me. Why would it be such a big deal? There were several businesses nearby. I said that I would feel a lot more comfortable meeting in a public parking lot. The person once more said that I could just give them my address and they would come over. At that point, I stopped responding. They weren't seeming to get it that I did not want them to come to my house. If somebody was that insistent on going to my house, then maybe they had bad intentions or something other than to look at my car. They texted again, but I ignored it. So I didn't get any other interest in the car that day. The next day, however, I did get another text regarding the car from a different number. This person said they were interested in the car and asked if they could look at it. I said yes, and right away suggested a local shopping center parking lot to meet at. The person said yes. We arranged for that night at 7 o'clock for them to look at the car. The person didn't really give me any information about themselves. I finally asked what they looked like and a name so I would know who I was meeting with. He said his name was John, and that was it. So when the time came, I drove the car to the local shopping center, which was about 5 minutes away. When I got there, the parking lot was mostly empty at the back, so that's where I went. I was a little nervous meeting someone from Craigslist for the first time, but I figured that we were in a very public place and the guy probably wanted to buy my car. A few minutes later, and I saw another car pull into the parking lot. It was a new-looking vehicle and it drove right over to me. After parking, a man got out. I got out of my car and I went over to meet him. I asked if he was John, and he paused for a moment before saying yes. The guy seemed sort of sketchy from the start. I thought that maybe I was just paranoid. He then walked over to the car and started looking at it. Within 2 minutes, he said to me, "I don't want this car." Then he started to walk away. I was thinking that it was really weird, but whatever. I said bye to John and he walked back to his car and then got inside. Then I went back inside of my car. I was so confused at the whole thing. Why did he want to look at the car? He didn't test drive it or anything. He could have seen online everything that he saw in person. So at that point, I started to drive home. I noticed that John started leaving at the same time as me. He drove behind me out of the parking lot. Then, as I drove down the street, he was also driving behind me. We went in the same direction for a while, and when I turned, he turned. I got suspicious at that point. I drove around a little and paid attention to John behind me. Every time that I would turn, he would turn as well. It seemed very suspicious. Enough suspicion for me to not want to drive home anymore. Instead, I just started making random turns and going down random streets. John did everything that I did. I didn't know what to do or where to go. Then I had an idea and I just started honking my horn constantly as I drove. I don't know why that's what I thought to do, but I did. He followed me for a good minute and then decided to stop. John turned at a random street and I kept going. Then I carefully drove all the rest of the way back home. Thankfully, I did not see John for the rest of the way back. When I got home, I felt lucky to have made it home all right. And that's when I remembered the other number that had texted me about the car, how they wanted to go to my house so badly. I realized that maybe it was the same person. Maybe John simply got a new number or phone and texted me with that. Then he would just follow me home to see where I lived. And that would also explain why he seemed sketchy and seemed to have no real interest in the car. I'm also guessing that John was not his real name. What that man's true intentions were, I don't know, but I'm glad I don't have to find out. I took my car off Craigslist after that and sold it to a dealer. I may have not made as much money as I was capable of, but at least I stayed safe.
A couple of years ago, I bought a gaming computer on Facebook Marketplace. I've been wanting to buy one for a while, and I knew that they're typically very expensive. So that gave me the idea to go on Facebook Marketplace and look for a used one. After several days of looking, I found one that I wanted. I decided to reach out to the seller and ask a little more information about it. The seller was a guy named Jeremy. We went back and forth a little bit, and I decided that I wanted to buy it. It was a pretty good deal, so we agreed on a day that I would go over and get the computer. It also came with a monitor, keyboard, and mouse as well. So after I bought it, I took it home, set it up, and started using it. I was happy with my purchase, and I used the computer for the next week and a half. Then I got another message on Facebook from Jeremy. He said that he wanted his computer back. I was really confused when I saw this, because he had just sold it to me like a week before. He said that he changed his mind and wanted it back now. I didn't want to return it. I liked the computer, and I had already installed several games and other programs on it. I told Jeremy no, I wasn't going to return it. Then Jeremy said that he would give me a certain amount of money for it. The funny thing is that the amount he offered was less than I paid for the computer by a few $100s. I pointed that out, and he said that it was all he could afford to give. Now, when he originally said he wanted it back, I assumed that meant he would pay the full price. I said the answer was still no. I was really annoyed that this guy was trying to get the computer back, and even more annoyed that he wasn't offering the full price. If he didn't want to sell it, then he shouldn't have sold it. However, Jeremy was not happy that I refused to give the computer back. He then sent me a friend request on Facebook, and then started messaging me a bunch of times. I ignored him for a while, but after he kept sending me messages for like 3 days straight, I blocked him. I thought that was that. This situation was strange enough. But unfortunately, that was not the end of Jeremy. Probably about a week after I blocked Jeremy, he showed up to my house. I happened to be home alone and was in my bedroom, on the very gaming computer that I had bought from Jeremy. It was nighttime and about 8 p.m. and dark out. I heard a knocking coming from the front door. I got up and left my room and went over to the living room and then looked out of the window. Jeremy was there on the front step. I recognized him from when I bought the computer. How did he know where I lived? This was really strange. I watched him stand there and knock again on the front door. I was wondering what on earth he had planned. Did he think that by showing up at my house unannounced that would make me change my mind? I stayed in the living room and ignored his knocks. I was hoping that he would just go away, and most of the lights in my house were off, so maybe he would think that I wasn't home. But I watched Jeremy hang around the front step for several more minutes. I was kind of looking around, and I had to move back from the window so that he wouldn't see me. He came back and knocked again on the front door, this time louder. He also yelled, asking for me to come outside. I still ignored him. I walked back to my bedroom, hoping that Jeremy would eventually give up and leave. When I got back to my room, I put in some headphones and sat back down at my computer. For the next 5 minutes or so, everything was fine. But suddenly, I heard a knocking sound. I took out my headphones and looked to the direction of my window. Jeremy was standing there, looking into my bedroom. I got up and ran over to the window and closed the blinds. Jeremy started yelling at me, but I couldn't really hear what he said very well. I left my bedroom and went back towards the living room. By that time, Jeremy had made his way back towards my front door. Then he started banging on it again. I went over to the door and shouted to him that I was going to call the police. Jeremy yelled at me to give the computer back. Then I called the cops. I told them what was going on,
and Jeremy still wasn't leaving, and he continued to stay there, even after I got off the phone with the police. But unfortunately, he finally left just moments before the cops got there. I talked to them, gave them a description of Jeremy, and told them my side of the story. After that, the police left and said to call back if Jeremy ever returned. I was afraid that he would, but luckily he didn't. I still have a hard time believing how crazy it was, and I can't believe that that actually happened.
Last year, I put my pool table on Facebook Marketplace. I had it in my basement, and it wasn't in the greatest of shape. Plus, I never really used it. It was taking up a lot of space, and I knew I needed to get rid of it. I listed it on Facebook Marketplace for a price that was pretty high. I wasn't in a huge hurry to sell it, but I wanted to get a good price for it. It wasn't a crazy high price, but you could probably find a nicer pool table for a little less if you tried. After listing it, the pool table received no interest. I wasn't surprised, and after a few weeks went by, I got the first message about it. It was a guy named Jim, and he told me right away that he wanted to buy the pool table. We messaged back and forth for a little while, and then made an appointment for Jim to come by and purchase the pool table. I really hadn't expected to sell it for this price, and figured that Jim would try to negotiate when he got to my house. I had a set price in my head that I was willing to go down to. Jim came over at about 6 p.m. on a weeknight after work. When he got to my house, I let him in, and then showed him down to the basement where the pool table was. He looked at it for a few minutes, and then agreed to buy it. I watched him take out all the cash of the full listing price and then give it to me. I was shocked, but more than happy to accept it. I told Jim that it was his now, and I would help him load it into his truck. Luckily, he had a pretty big pickup truck, and it would just fit. It was a bit of a pain to move the coffee table into his truck, but we got it done. He then left, and I felt really good about the price that I had gotten. I truly didn't think that I would be able to sell the table for that much. After this, almost 2 weeks went by. Then, I got a message from Jim. He told me that he felt that he had gotten ripped off, and he could have gotten a better deal. Now, this was over a week later, so I wasn't going to take the table back. I told him it's been over a week, and a deal is a deal. This obviously didn't make Jim very happy. He argued with me for a while, telling me to give him some money back, but I refused. I didn't have to give him anything, and he should have tried to negotiate or looked around for a better deal if he really wanted one. I felt that this wasn't my responsibility to help him out. We ended up leaving the conversation on not a very good note, but I felt that it was over. A few days went by, and Jim didn't reply to me at all. Then, things got strange. My girlfriend was over at my house one night for dinner, and at one point she got up from the table and told me that she saw some guy standing in the front yard. I got up, and we both walked over near the window. When we got there, I didn't see anybody, but I did notice a white truck parked out on the street. I realized that it was Jim's truck. I remembered it from when I helped him load the pool table in it. I told my girlfriend the story of how he was mad about the price. We looked all around the house through the windows, but we couldn't find Jim. We were going from window to window, and when I finally returned to the front of the house, I opened the front door. As I did, I saw the truck starting up and drive away. I decided to message Jim and tell him that I knew he was at my house, but when I went online to do so, he had blocked me. 2 nights later, he was prowling around outside again. This time, I was by myself and in the living room watching TV. I noticed out of the corner of my eye a man walking past the front window. About a minute later, I heard my front doorknob turn, but thankfully, it was locked. I didn't waste any time and I called the police. However, Jim left pretty soon after I did, and he was long gone before the police got there. I told them the whole situation and asked what they could do. After that, I felt confident that the police would be able to look into it and I wouldn't have any problems from Jim again. But the very next morning, as I left my house to go to work, I was walking to my car. Right as I was about 5 feet from my driver's door, I heard somebody sprinting behind me. I looked around to see Jim running at me with full force. I chose to run back into my house instead of going for my car door. This gave me a slight amount of distance on Jim, and I somehow made it inside right before he got to the door. This time, he was really mad. He tried opening my front door and then went to the window when it was locked, and he started banging on my window. I called the police again, who arrived in a very fast time when Jim was still there. He was caught and luckily didn't do any damage to my house. This experience caused me to stop using Facebook Marketplace for the time being. I know there are many good people who use it, but I would recommend anybody to not give out your address and be careful.
When I was 18 years old, I was living with my parents and it was the summertime. I had just finished my first year of college and didn't really have any money. I was looking for a summer job, but having a hard time finding one. My parents were divorced, so I would live with my mom most of the time, but would stay with my dad for a few days here and there. I remember that I really wanted money, and I decided to go on Craigslist to see if there were any odd jobs that I could do. They have a job section on the website for both temporary and permanent jobs. Most of the temporary jobs are things like yard work, projects, or helping people move, things like that. I saw one that seemed really easy. The ad simply said, "Watch my house when I'm away." I clicked on the ad to learn more, and to be 100% honest, my instincts told me right away that it seemed a little weird. There were a couple of pictures of the inside of this house, but not much information was given. However, what was given was the price that the owner would pay, and I don't remember exactly what it was, but it was pretty good. It was 2 nights staying at the house and watching it for probably like $400 or something. I responded quickly because it seemed like easy cash. The only thing I would have to do is live in some random person's house for 2 days and then get paid good money. The house didn't look super fancy or anything from the pictures, it just looked pretty average. I texted the owner and said that I was interested in the job. After texting back and forth for like 10 minutes with the guy, he said that I could have the job. So a few days later, I went to his house. I didn't tell either of my parents, and I was staying at my dad's at the time. I told him I was going to a friend's for a couple of nights. My mom was way more strict than my dad, and I know she would have asked a bunch of questions, but my dad just said, "Cool, have fun." I knew my parents would not have let me do it if I told them, but I was thinking that it would be fine, and I really wanted the money. After I got to the address, which was like 15 minutes away, the house looked pretty average. In fact, if anything, it didn't really look that nice. The neighborhood had a decent amount of houses, and it seemed pretty quiet. I knocked on the door, and a man answered whose name was Jerry. He was like 50 or so, and said that he was going out of town for a few days. The only instructions he gave me were to watch the place and to stay there and sleep in the guest room. That was it. He didn't have any pets or plants, so I wasn't sure why I had to watch the house. Maybe he just wanted peace of mind knowing that somebody was there and he had the money to pay for it. Then he gave me a set of keys and left. It seemed kind of weird, but it was all right with me. The house was kind of small and not that nice. It had just 1 level, and then a basement which I didn't bother to go down and look at. There was a living room, dining room, kitchen, bathroom, and 2 bedrooms. There was not a whole lot of furniture either, but enough to be comfortable. I sat on the couch in the living room and went on my phone and watched TV. I looked around a little bit in the kitchen and there was basically no food, so at one point I went out and got some. I came back and continued to just relax on the couch. I was still there when it got to be late at night. Aside from the TV, it was very quiet. I was not used to it being so quiet because both of my parents have pets and I also have siblings. So as I sat there on the couch, about to go to sleep at like 11 p.m., I suddenly heard what sounded like somebody in the basement. It was footsteps walking around down there. Right away, it really spooked me. I didn't know what that could possibly be. I was too scared to go down and investigate. I got up from the couch and just stood there, but the noises seemed to stop after that. I stayed on the couch listening and watching the TV to take my mind off it. The noises were really not that loud, but it definitely seemed like somebody had been walking around down there. After like 10 minutes, I heard the footsteps again. This time, they started coming up the stairs. There was no mistaking it this time, because I heard the creaking of the stairs as they walked up. I was terrified. I got up and I ran into the guest bedroom and shut the door. I listened close, but I didn't hear anybody walking around anymore. This was too weird, so I texted the owner. I didn't care if I was bothering him so late at night. It was creeping me out so much that I was literally about to just leave and go home. Surprisingly, the owner texted me back pretty quickly. I had told him that I thought I heard someone in the basement and I was really creeped out. He told me that was just his roommate Carl. This made me really confused. He had not mentioned at all before that he had a roommate living in the basement, and if he did have a roommate, why would he need somebody else to watch the house? I sat there thinking about it for a minute, but I decided that perhaps he didn't like his roommate or was afraid that his roommate would steal his stuff or something. I was just trying to make sense of it in my mind. So I left the bedroom and walked around the house. Nobody was there at all. I did not go in the basement though. I figured that Carl was down there. I didn't hear any more noises from the basement either. I guessed that Carl must have gone to bed. So then I went back to the guest bedroom to try to go to sleep. I felt better at that point, and after a little while was able to fall asleep. However, I awoke sometime later. I knew that it was still the middle of the night, and I was suddenly wide awake. I didn't hear anything, but I looked around. All the lights were off, but when I looked to the doorway, I saw it. Jerry, the owner of the house, was standing right outside my bedroom door and looking at me. As soon as I saw him, he quickly moved away. There was no mistaking it though. I knew what I saw. I was so freaked out, but I didn't know what to do. I ran over to the door and closed it. Then I turned on the lights. I heard a door closing in the distance, but I don't know which one it was. After not hearing anything for a couple of minutes, I decided that I was getting out of there. I gathered all my things, ran out of the room, and left. I didn't see or hear anyone in the house as I did. I drove back to my dad's and got home at like 4 a.m. The next morning, I told my dad that I had just gone back early from my friends. I figured he would freak out if he heard what happened. I was just glad that I made it out of there okay, and I never got another text from Jerry at all. I realized that he probably never left. I don't think he had a roommate either. I think Jerry was the person who I heard in the basement, and he made up the story about having a roommate. The Craigslist ad was gone when I looked back online. I stayed off of Craigslist after that. Those events scared me from using Craigslist, and I've stuck to real jobs since then.
Last year, my laptop broke, and I really needed a new one. I looked around online, and also went to Best Buy, but then I had the idea to look on Facebook Marketplace as well. It seemed like it could be the cheapest and fastest option. I didn't need it to be brand new, and I also didn't want to wait for the shipping time of buying a used one online. So I looked to Facebook Marketplace of people that were close to me. Luckily, I live in an area with quite a few other people. I was able to find the laptop that I wanted and found one for a reasonable price as well. It was not too far away, and I contacted the seller and said that I would like to buy it as soon as possible. The seller got back to me a short time later and told me that I could come over to his house. I didn't like this idea though. Possibly nothing bad would happen and it would be fine, but I didn't want to go to a random guy's house. I responded to him and said that I would rather meet in a public location that was in the area. The man asked why, and I said that I just didn't want to go to someone's house that I didn't know. After a little more of a conversation through Facebook messaging, he finally agreed. He gave me a name of a local restaurant to meet him at and said that he would be there at 9 p.m. I agreed and then went to withdraw some cash. I wasn't all that happy that the man wanted to meet at 9 o'clock at night, but at least it was a public location. I had never been to the restaurant before where he wanted to meet, but that night I drove there, and it was a smaller and older looking place. There was nothing else really that close to it, and it was kind of away from the other businesses in the area. The parking lot was in the back, and I parked and then messaged the seller, letting him know that I was there. He responded saying to come inside. After that, I got out of my car and walked inside the restaurant. The place seemed pretty old, and also appeared to be more of a bar than a restaurant. I found a small open table and sat down at a stool and looked around. I couldn't tell where the guy was. His profile picture from Facebook was not of himself, but a logo of a sports team. I looked around to see if there was a guy with a laptop or by himself, but I didn't see anybody. I messaged him, saying that I was there and inside, and asked him where he was. A couple of minutes went by, and I still didn't see him, and he didn't reply either. Finally, after about 5 minutes, I got a notification that he responded. When I read it, he said that he was sorry, but he couldn't make it. I was really confused. He had just texted me earlier telling me to come on inside as if he was there. Now he says he's not going to make it? I was frustrated and decided to just leave. I didn't even want to buy the laptop from him anymore. The guy was just too weird. I was sure that there were plenty of other good laptops for sale, and I wouldn't have a problem finding another one. So I got up and left the bar. I headed out to my car in the parking lot behind the bar and then got inside. Then I started to drive back home. The bar was maybe 15 minutes from my house, and when I got back onto the roads, they were very quiet. But after beginning to drive home, a car left the bar right behind me. I thought nothing of it at first, but the more I drove, it remained right on my tail. After making several turns, it didn't seem like a coincidence anymore. It seemed like whoever was driving that car was deliberately following me, especially because of the fact that they were following really close behind, and if I went faster or slower, they would maintain about the same speed as I was going. When I got within 5 minutes of my apartment, I started to really worry. But part of me was just telling myself, there's no way this car is actually following me. It's just me being paranoid. It was a pickup truck that was following me, and about average size. I really could just see the headlights though, and couldn't tell who was behind the wheel. Finally, I made it to the turnoff for my apartment. I lived in a pretty large complex that had multiple buildings and a huge parking lot. When I pulled in, so did the truck. That was my worst fear. I drove through the parking lot but did not stop. Instead, I drove all the way through and then left the parking lot on the other side. The truck also left with me. At that point, it was pretty much confirmed 100% to me that I was being followed. My adrenaline was rushing and I was desperate to lose the car. But still, I knew better than to speed or drive recklessly. Instead, I started turning onto random streets and into random businesses and restaurant parking lots. Then I would exit out the other side and go back onto the road. It was probably very clear to whoever was behind me now that I knew they were following me and I was trying to lose them. This went on for quite some time though, probably 30 minutes. Soon though, my light came on signaling that I needed to get gas soon. I got really worried. I couldn't keep this up for much longer. The truck was still right on my tail. I kept doing what I was doing and would probably be able to go for about 40 more miles or so. Then, when I made a turn, the truck just went the other way. I couldn't believe it, but it was finally over. I guess he finally gave up. After the truck drove away, I went and got some gas and then went back to my apartment. I was very careful the entire time, and I did not see the truck for the rest of the drive. After getting back home, I realized that the driver of the truck was likely the seller of the laptop. I hadn't really thought about it when I was being followed, but it all made sense now. He told me that he was inside the bar to try to get me to go in. I went back to look at the listing, and it was now gone. The user had blocked me as well, whoever he was. I was a little bit worried, because originally I did drive to my apartment complex, but I just hoped that he thought it was the first of all the random places that I turned in to lose him. He also wouldn't know which building I lived in or which unit was mine. Luckily though, I never saw him again. I also haven't used Facebook Marketplace since that incident.
A couple of summers ago, I was looking to buy a golf cart. I live a little out in the country, and there are a lot of roads and paths nearby that would be great for it. And my yard is also pretty large as well, and I've been thinking about making a path. So I remember that I started looking for one on Craigslist. There were a few in the area, and I found one that was probably the best deal. It was a new listing, and it was looking like a good golf cart. I contacted the seller and asked if it was still available, which it was. The listing said that it worked fine and ran great. I decided that I would like to buy it, and I asked the owner if I could come over and see it. If all lined up and it was what the ad said, then I would like to buy it. So I got the address from the seller and we agreed to meet there the next day. When I arrived, it was about 10 minutes away off an old country dirt road. In this particular area, most people have very large properties of at least 5 or 10 acres, sometimes many more. This property looked to be very large. I parked on the side of the street, and then there was a long driveway that I walked up, and I saw a guy walking towards me. This was the seller, and he said hi to me, and I said that I was there to see the golf cart. He said that he was going to take me to it, and then we walked over towards his garage. There was another golf cart there, and the man told me to hop on. The guy selling the cart appeared to be in his 50s or so and had grayish hair. He said that he would drive me to the cart that he was selling. So I got on, and the man started to drive away. We went behind his house, and then we went onto this trail that led into the woods. I was wondering where exactly we were going. I thought that if he was trying to sell the golf cart that it would already be in his driveway maybe. Still, I didn't ask him at that point. We drove down this path through the woods, and the farther we got, the more dense the woods became. I was amazed at how large his property was, or at least how far we were driving down the trail. At one point, he turned left and went down another trail in the woods. Then he turned right at another path. I'm not even joking when I tell you we were driving on trails through the woods for at least 10 minutes. It was kind of loud, so nobody really said anything. I kept thinking that we had to be close, but we just kept going and going, deeper and deeper into the woods. And the longer we were, the more I thought that maybe I should just leave. It seemed sort of sketchy. After a long time, I finally spoke up, and I asked the man why it was so far away. The man just turned to me and said, "Well, this golf cart isn't technically mine." I didn't know what he meant by that at all, or how that related to driving into the woods for the longest time. I sat there thinking about what he said. Then I just wanted to leave. For a while, I was too nervous to say anything. Then I finally spoke up. I said, "I changed my mind. Can we just go back? The man turned and laughed a little and said, "Oh no, we're in too deep now, son." He just kept right on going. Then, I don't know if it was just instincts or what, but as we approached a small bridge, I just leaped off the golf cart. I hit the ground and fell down, but was not injured. The golf cart slammed to a stop up ahead. I quickly got to my feet and then ran over and jumped down around a bridge towards the stream that went under it. There was this really small and shallow stream. It was maybe 6 feet wide with many rocks on the edge, and the water only being maybe 2 feet deep at the deepest point. I just started running along the stream through the woods. The man did not seem to get off the golf cart and chase after me though. I just kept running, and then after a while changed to a jog. After about 10 minutes of that, I finally hit the end of the property. There was a dirt road that I could tell was not part of the man's property anymore. So I took out my phone and I barely had a signal. I then directed my way back off instincts and was thankfully able to make it back. When I returned to my car, I saw that there was now a closed gate blocking off the driveway of the property that I had just visited. I got in my truck and went home and never went on Craigslist again.
This is the story of the time that I got a job from Craigslist. Years ago, when I was in college, I hardly had any money. I was really busy, and I remember during the summer one year I got this internship, but I didn't get paid anything for it. I was living with my parents, so I didn't have too many expenses, but I still wanted to have a little bit of money. I couldn't get a job because I didn't have enough time in my schedule. But that gave me the idea to look on Craigslist for something that I could do on a weekend sometime. I knew that there were people who would pay money for you to do yard work for them or something. And yard work was exactly the type of thing that I was looking for. I was pretty confident in my skills, and after looking on Craigslist for a couple of days, I saw an ad that interested me. It was a man who said he needed somebody to do quite a bit of work on his property. The job would take several hours at least, but he was willing to pay good money for it. And the guy also said that there was potential that he would need work done again another time. The ad did not have a specific day, but said to contact him for more information. So I reached out, and pretty quickly I got a response. We arranged a meeting of basically a job interview at a local restaurant. The man's name was Robert, and he seemed to be a nice guy. He said that he owned several houses in the general area. Some he was fixing up to sell, and others to rent. He recently bought a house that needed a lot of yard work done to the property. He said that if I wanted, he might need me for another property in the future as well. The man asked me what day I would be available to work, and I told him. So he gave me the address of the house and said that I could have the job. When the date we agreed on several days later came, I drove to the house and got there when I was supposed to. Robert was not there, but he was at another one of his properties. He said that when I was almost done working to text him and he would come by and pay me. Then I started work. The property of the house was a little bit out there in the country. I was supposed to mow the grass, do some weeding, pick up all the tree branches and stuff in the yard, and then plant a bunch of these flowers that the guy had. The yard was pretty large in both the front and backyard, and at the end of the backyard was a large woods. I'm not sure if that was still his property or not, but I believe at least part of it was. It was definitely a lot of work, but I didn't mind it too much. About an hour in, when I was mowing the grass on the guy's riding mower, I saw something off. I was in the backyard and a good distance away from the house, but I saw what looked like a man staring at me from inside a window to the house. It really took me by surprise, because I was under the impression that the house was empty. I thought that maybe someone was renting the place or something like that. As I kept mowing, I looked over a few more times. When I got a little closer, the man suddenly moved away from the window. I didn't get a good look at him, but later on, I remember that I was mowing in the front and I saw him again. He was once more staring in my direction. When we made eye contact, he didn't move away this time. Instead, he continued to stare at me. I had to look away because it was really weird. I tried to just ignore it though. Soon I finished with the lawn and then went on to the gardening. Once more though, as I was doing this, I noticed the guy staring at me. Not too long after that time, I remember that I got a call from the owner of the house. He was just asking me how things were going and said that he would come by in a little bit. I said that it was going good, but then I decided to ask him if somebody was renting the house. The man said no, the house was currently vacant. I told him how there was a guy inside that kept staring at me. The man told me that he was going to call the police, and he was also going to come over as soon as he could. He recommended that I go to my car and wait in there until the police arrive. I took his advice and I stopped working and went to my car. I was parked on the side of the street out front, and I kept looking to the windows but no longer saw the man. About 10 minutes later, the police arrived, followed by the homeowner about 2 minutes after that. He opened up the house for the police and they went inside. About 10 minutes later, they came out and said that the place was empty. The man must have left. I was very confused because I hadn't seen him leave, so it had to be out the back. Robert went inside and said that he saw evidence that somebody else had been there. I didn't go in the house, so I don't know if something was stolen or what, but I was glad that he didn't think I was crazy or making it up. The police looked around the front and backyard briefly and then left. Before Robert left, though, he said that he trusted that I would finish and he paid me. I was in fact going to finish, so I stayed there and I continued gardening. I was almost done, and it took me only like 20 or 30 more minutes to finish. When I was done, I was taking the weeds and tossing them in the woods like I was supposed to. As I approached the entrance of the woods, I saw the man again. He was standing pretty deep in the woods, partly behind a tree. I'm not sure if he knew that I saw him or not. I tried to play it off and I calmly walked away. I was really glad that I was done with work. I quickly went to my car and then left. I called Robert and told him that the guy was back. After that, I went home. I'm not sure who that guy was or how he got into the house, but that was a really creepy experience.
This happened in August of 2019. I was using Facebook Marketplace to look for some furniture. I had used Marketplace as a way to both buy and sell things several times before. For me, it had worked great to that point. However, I had the weirdest experience of my life the last time that I used it. So I remember that I found this desk that seemed good. I was looking for one. I just wanted like a very basic desk. Then I could paint it and do other stuff to customize it if I wanted. So I was searching for really cheap ones, and I found one that I really liked for about $10. I contacted the seller and said that I could come over the next day and get it. The seller was a guy named Corey. So Corey told me to come anytime the next day, but to just let him know. So the next day, he gave me his address, and I texted him and then headed over when it was all right. I put his address into my maps on my phone and drove over there. I drove my SUV and removed the back seats to fit the desk. When I arrived in Corey's neighborhood, it did not appear to be very nice. Several of the homes seemed to be vacant or abandoned. Some had overgrown grass and trees in the front yard, and others had graffiti on them. And Corey's place was not too much nicer. It was this small white house that was really dirty and had long grass. I looked multiple times to make sure that I was in the right place, and I was. So I parked on the side of the road and texted Corey. He told me to come on inside. So I walked up through the yard of overgrown grass and then to the front step and knocked on the door. I waited for almost a minute before the door opened. This man with long hair and a long beard answered. I told him that I was there for the desk he was selling on Facebook Marketplace. He then told me to come inside and pointed over to the desk. It was sitting on the ground not far away from the front door at all. Inside of Corey's house, there appeared to be almost no furniture at all. That was kind of strange, but I walked over and then Corey offered to help me with the desk. We both grabbed one end and carefully lifted it. Then we walked it to my car and put it in the back. I paid Corey the money, and overall, he seemed pretty nice. Then he went back to his house, and I got inside of my car and drove away. Now, after getting back home, I was able to unload the desk by myself and get it inside. Then I got a good look at it for the first time. The desk had a few drawers, but I realized they were all empty except for one. Inside one of the drawers, in the very back, there was this envelope taped to the inside of it. I was curious as to what it was, and I took it and opened it. Inside were a bunch of pictures. They were all taken from a disposable camera. Most of the pictures were of my Facebook profile, though. It was like somebody had taken a picture of a computer screen. It really creeped me out when I saw it. Then there were a few others. One was of the listing of my apartment building online. That one confused me at first, but then I saw a few more pictures, and they were of me.
It was when I was walking up to Corey's house and when I was getting out of my car. I was so freaked out by this, but I didn't know what to do. I went onto Facebook again to try to find Corey's account, but I couldn't. It was like he was just gone. Either he deleted his account or he blocked me or something. After that, I just kind of moved on. I still have the desk, and I don't know where the envelope with pictures are. I think I lost it. But I'm just glad that I never saw Corey again after that. Maybe it was his idea of a joke or something, but it was sure creepy.
This happened just a couple of months ago. I was on Facebook on my phone one night, as I would be on almost a daily basis. I was scrolling through my friends' posts and looking at news and other stuff for a while. I was kind of bored, so I just decided to click on the Marketplace tab to see if there was anything cool on there. I had used Facebook Marketplace once in the past to buy a phone, and it worked out really well, so I would go back and look to see what they had occasionally. I saw the average stuff you see: cars, phones, laptops, and other random junk. Then I saw an ad for a free TV. It looked like a newer TV, and I was actually kind of wanting to get one for my bedroom, so I clicked on the ad. I was wanting to see if the TV was broken or had a problem with it, and that's why it was free, or if it was good and working. When I clicked on it, I saw that it was a 50-inch TV. The pictures showed that it was standing on the floor of a carpeted room, and they had one of the TV on, showing that it worked. The post was made by a woman named Barbara, and she said she was moving out and didn't need the TV anymore, but it worked just fine. When I looked, the listing said it had been posted about an hour ago. I responded to the post asking if the TV was still available, and if so, I could pick it up at the earliest convenience. I got a message back from the owner about 10 minutes later. Barbara said that yes, it was, and if I wanted the TV, I could come and pick it up the next evening. We agreed on 8 p.m., and it was set. I was really excited to get the TV, because I knew it was most likely worth hundreds of dollars, and I had been thinking of buying one soon. The next afternoon, I messaged Barbara to confirm, and she told me just to let her know when I was there, and she would let me in. I went to work that day, and when I got off, I went home for a while before leaving for Barbara's. She had given me her address earlier in the day, and she seemed like a very friendly person. I put the address into my phone and followed the instructions on getting there. It wasn't too far away, maybe 10 or 15 minutes. When I got to the neighborhood, it seemed pretty average, a little bit farther out from the city, and the houses seemed to have a little more land. I then turned onto a road which had a sign that said dead end. I kept driving, and when I got to the end of the street, it led to a single skinny driveway, which according to my directions was Barbara's house. The long skinny driveway led right up to a detached garage with an old-looking pickup truck parked in front of it. I decided to drive into the driveway because I didn't want to carry the TV that long of a ways to my vehicle, and I thought it would be easier. Once I parked, I messaged Barbara telling her that I was there. She responded almost immediately, saying that I could come right on in and the TV was on the floor in the living room. I got out and walked up to the front door. It was dark out by now, and as I approached the door, I noticed that all the lights in the house appeared to be off. It seemed a little strange, but I got to the front door and slowly opened it. It was unlocked, and when I got inside, I couldn't really see anything. I looked around on the wall for a light switch, and had to turn on the flashlight on my phone after I couldn't find one within a few seconds. Finally, I found one and I turned it on. A very dim light in the corner of the room appeared. I could see that it was an old living room with lawn carpet and some furniture. I didn't see a TV at all inside, and I suddenly started to get a bad feeling. I walked a little bit farther into the house. There was a kitchen off the living room which looked pretty average, and then a hallway leading to a back door and another type of living room, it appeared. There was also a staircase going upstairs and one going down to the basement. I couldn't find the TV anywhere, and the place was giving me the creeps. I opened up the Facebook app and messaged Barbara again, telling her that I couldn't find the TV and confirming the address with her, asking if it was correct. I waited in the silent house for her response, but I was getting the urge to just leave. Finally, I got a response from Barbara. Barbara said, yes, it's the correct address. And then she said, sorry, I meant the upstairs living area. There's a staircase in the living room you can take. I got suspicious and was wondering why Barbara didn't just come and talk to me, and why she wouldn't have mentioned to go upstairs right away. I walked towards the stairs anyways, though. But as I was about to take my first step up, I heard someone walking to the front door of the house. They were outside and turned around and saw the screen door open up and the front door to the house, which I had left half open, then swung shut. All I saw was an arm closing it, but not the person. It appeared it was a man's arm, and after the door shut, I heard someone start to come up the stairs from the basement. I walked away from the stairs and then went to the back of the house. I was really creeped out now, and once I saw the back door, I made a run for it. Just as I was, I heard whoever was coming upstairs from the basement move faster up the stairs. Once I got to the back door, I opened it and went outside. It was tall grass, and I saw many trees and wildflowers. I ran sideways through the backyard until I was in the neighbor's backyard. Then I went through a few more yards. I basically walked through a few people's backyards and then past someone's house to get back to the street. I looked from there at the house I had just been to. I couldn't see much in the night, but my car was there and I knew I needed to get back to it. I then looked at my phone and saw several messages from Barbara. She said, "Come back," and she asked me why I left in all caps. I certainly did not want to go back there, but I walked slowly down the street to get back to my car, which was parked in her driveway. Once I made it to the front of the driveway, I didn't see anybody in the front yard at all. I then sprinted to my car and unlocked it. When I got inside, I saw that my front windshield had been smashed and the glass was all shattered. I backed out of the driveway, and as I did, I appeared to see a man looking at me from the front window of the house. He had a sort of evil smile on his face. When I got back, I reported Barbara and what had happened. I really don't think Barbara was even real, and it was probably that guy that was looking at me through the window. I think I might have walked into some sort of setup, but beyond that, I have no clue what was going on there.
Last year, I was looking to buy a new car. I knew that I wanted to buy one used because I didn't want to make car payments. I just wanted to buy a sort of old one with cash. This can be a risk, but my dad has taught me a lot about cars over the years. I'm able to drive one and look at it, and I can usually tell overall if it's alright or not. If I'm serious about buying it, I will take it to a local mechanic and they can confirm that the car has nothing wrong with it. So I looked on a few websites and I did some Google searches. I was just looking for something like a Toyota Camry or any decent sedan. Maybe something 10 years old with not a crazy amount of miles. Soon my searches took me to Facebook Marketplace. I was looking at cars there, and I came across a listing that caught my attention. It was a 2015 Camry that had 88,000 miles on it. The photos were kind of bad quality, and they appeared to be taken at night. There also wasn't that much information on the car. However, it did make a point to say that it ran great and needed no work. I decided that it was worth looking at, and if I liked it, possibly buying. I contacted the seller, a man named John. He responded to me saying that the car was still available. I asked him if I would be able to look at it, and he said yes. I suggested a date and time, and at first he agreed to it. It was the following evening at 5:30 p.m. That way I could go on my way home from work. I asked where we would meet, and the guy said his house. However, he didn't give me his address right away. Overall, in our conversations of texting on Facebook, he wasn't the best communicator, but he did agree to his house at 5:30 the following day. When I was almost done with work the next day, I texted him to confirm. The guy said that he was working late and that he was going to have to push the time back a bit. I said fine, no problem. He then said 7 o'clock. I said okay to that and went home after work, awaiting the man to text me again. Then at 7, he rescheduled again to 8. Then at 8, changed it to 9. I was getting annoyed, and it was getting late. Finally, at 8:30, he texted me an address and said that I could go there. I didn't know why he kept pushing the time back. I thought maybe he was working late or maybe something else, but I didn't ask. So I drove to the house, which was a ways away. It was this really quiet neighborhood that had tons of small houses in it. The area seemed kind of creepy. I mean, the houses were all beat up looking. I parked and saw the house number to confirm the address. The house looked pretty average for the neighborhood. There was a driveway, but no cars in it at all. So I assumed the car that I was looking at must be in the garage or something. I texted that I was there, and John responded saying to come to the door and ring the doorbell. That seemed strange because obviously the car was not inside the house. Still, I did what he said. I left my car, walked up to the front step, and rang the doorbell. Not long after ringing, the door opened, but nobody was there. It was like whoever opened the door quickly moved away. I looked inside and it was pitch dark. All the lights appeared to be off, and I did not see or hear anyone. I stood there just looking around. About 30 seconds later, I heard a man's voice yell from somewhere deep inside the house and to the left. He said, "Come in." I said, "I'm just here to look at the car." He said, "I know, come in." I was feeling pretty sketched out in this moment. I said, "Actually, I think I'll just wait outside for you." I didn't know why I would have to go inside his house to look at the car. Again, there's no way that he had that car inside the house with him, so I'm not going in there. And it looked suspicious as can be. But the guy yelled at me again to come in. At that point, I did walk in, but just a step. It was really just so I could look around more. The guy was not in sight. But then again, I really could not see anything in there at all other than a few feet in front of me. It was just too dark. All the lights were out. I stood there for a minute or so, looking around, and it was quiet. Then the man angrily yelled at me to come in. It really creeped me out. It was much louder than he had yelled at me before, and much more angry. I instantly turned around, walked out of the house, and left. I drove home and then blocked the guy on Facebook. I didn't go back on there and instead got a car on Craigslist. I'm not sure why the guy wanted me to enter the house so bad, but I think it was a trap. Maybe he wanted to rob me or kidnap me. And I never saw the car there. I'm glad that I left when I did.
Last year, I needed to buy a new car. Mine broke down, and I ended up getting rid of it. I borrowed a friend's car for a couple of weeks while I looked for a new one. I wanted to get something used for fairly cheap. I looked multiple places, at dealers, on Craigslist, and Facebook Marketplace as well. I ended up finding a car that I liked the best on Facebook Marketplace of all places. The listing seemed legit, and a price that was really good, but not too good to be true. So I reached out and contacted the seller, a man named Drew. After talking briefly about the car, I said that I would like to look at it. I wanted to take it for a test drive, and then possibly buy it if I liked how it was. Drew said that I could come over and look at it. However, I asked if we could meet in the parking lot of a nearby store. Drew agreed to this, and we decided to meet the following night at 7 p.m. So when the time came, I drove to the store, which had a very large parking lot. The back side of it was almost always empty, and it was when I got there. So after arriving, Drew was already there with the vehicle. There was also another car parked there. It was another guy who I guess must have been Drew's friend. I got out and met them both, and then I looked at the car in person. It seemed good, and I was offered a test drive, to which I agreed. Then I got inside of the car. Drew got in the passenger seat, and his friend got in the back, right behind me. I didn't really know why the other guy came with, but I started up the car and then started to leave the parking lot. My plan was to just drive around the nearby street and then head back to the store. But right as I was leaving the parking lot, Drew said that they knew of a good place to take the test drive. The guy behind me agreed. They said they would direct me on where to go. I didn't think that much of it, but it seemed a little bit odd. So I followed their instructions, and I took one road for a short ways before going to another one. Soon, I was told to turn again. By now, I no longer knew where I was. These roads were more quiet, and there was also more woods. Nothing about it other than being quiet made it seem better for a test drive or anything. We were getting farther away, and I was just getting a bad feeling about it. Soon, I was told to turn again. When I did, this time the road became very narrow. By now, things were quiet and awkward inside the car. I really just wanted to go back to the parking lot and leave. Then the man told me to turn at the next right. I saw the road they were referring to, and it was this really sketchy looking road surrounded by woods. I didn't want to, and I drove right past it. When I did, the men both got upset, telling me to go back, but I didn't. I told them that I could see that the car ran well, and I just wanted to go back to the parking lot now. But instead of saying okay, or they understood, they said no and to go back. They seemed angry with me, but I didn't listen. I just kept driving, going back to the parking lot. For the first few minutes, the guys were both nagging me to go back to that one road, but I was luckily able to drive the rest of the way back without a problem. I got back to my car in the parking lot and parked nearby. Then I got out. Now, right after I got out, without saying anything, Drew moved over to the driver's seat of the car. Then the other guy got out of the back seat and went to his car. Then they both just left. I wasn't asked if I wanted to buy the car or anything. They were just gone. That made me even more suspicious. Why did they want me to drive there? Were they planning to rob me or kidnap me or something? They didn't even seem interested in selling the car. It was really sketchy looking back. I reported what happened and did not end up buying a car on Facebook Marketplace.
I used Facebook Marketplace to try to sell my car. I had an old SUV that I was trying to see what I could get for. I had recently gotten a newer vehicle. I knew that my SUV wasn't worth all that much and was just asking $3,000 for it. It ran fine, but had a lot of miles and was older. I took some pictures and then listed it on Facebook Marketplace. Within days, I had some interest in the car. The very first person to contact me about it was a woman named Annie. She told me that she was very interested and would like to come over and take a look at the car. I told her that she could come by any time the next day because I didn't have anything going on. She suggested 8 p.m. and I agreed to it. So the next night, I got the car out of the garage and onto the driveway. Now, I live in a very quiet neighborhood with a little bit more space. My driveway is pretty long, so I put the SUV I was selling about halfway down. At 8 o'clock, a van pulled up in front of the bushes at the end of my front yard. I figured this had to be Annie. Sure enough, a woman got out that resembled the profile picture. She had blonde hair that was decently long and was wearing a black coat. She walked up to me by the car and we shook hands. Then she began looking at the vehicle. After about 5 minutes, she asked if we could go for a test drive, and I agreed. She got in the driver's seat and I got in the passenger's. Then she backed out of the driveway, and I suggested that we should just drive around the neighborhood a little bit. The roads around there were usually very quiet and pretty easy to drive on. So we left and drove around my neighborhood for a little while. The test drive went as expected. Annie asked several basic questions about the car and seemed to be genuinely interested in it. I answered her questions, and I really thought that I might be able to sell the car to her. She drove the car pretty well, and after about 15 minutes, we headed back to my house. When we got there, she pulled back into the driveway and parked the car where it had been. After we got out of the car, she gave the keys back to me and said that she would have to think about it. I understood. I was a little bit disappointed, but buying a car is a big decision, so I really wasn't that let down or anything. I told her to let me know if she wanted it, and then we shook hands again and said bye to each other. Then I went back inside of my house as Annie drove away. After getting back inside of my house, though, almost instantly I heard something. Now, I live alone and don't have any pets, so I didn't know what on earth the noise could have been. Then I heard footsteps coming from inside. They were in the other room, as I was just inside of the living room. It sounded like it was coming from possibly the kitchen, and there was no doubt that somebody else was in my house with me. I called out, asking if anybody was there. Things were just silent. I yelled loudly, asking if anybody was inside my house, and said that I was calling the police if they were. After yelling that, I backed away towards my front door. I could leave the house if somebody was in here and came after me. My heart was racing, and I didn't really know what to do, because clearly somebody else was inside. Then I heard the back door to my house that goes to the patio open up. This was still out of my view, so I couldn't see anything. The door then shut, and I stayed where I was. I wasn't 100% sure that whoever was in the house had actually left. Probably 10 seconds later, as I still stood in the living room by the front door to my house, I heard a noise coming from outside and behind me. It was coming from the driveway, and I looked and saw a man sprinting down my driveway. He was running so fast, plus the sun had just set, so I couldn't get a good description of him. The only thing I could really tell was that he was a grown man in dark clothing. After he sprinted to the end of the driveway, my jaw dropped. I watched him quickly jump into the back seat of a car that had just come to a stop on the side of the road in front of my house. The car was the same van that Annie had been driving. After he got inside, the van violently screeched away. It was only then that I looked around my entire house to make sure that nobody else was there. They were gone, but I had several things stolen from me. Some cash from my bedroom, a watch, my old iPhone that I didn't use anymore, and a couple of other small things. I called the police, and they came out a short time later. I told them everything, but unfortunately, I didn't get the license plate to the van. Annie, if that was even her name, blocked me on Facebook, but I gave what I could to the police. The way the intruder got in the house was my own fault. I had left my garage door open when I was gone, and the door to the house from the garage was unlocked. I felt really stupid for that. But my neighborhood is always very quiet, and my garage is so far back in the driveway, I never felt in danger if it was open. I guess the guy was in Annie's van, and when we left for the test drive, he got out and just walked right in. I learned not to invite anybody that I didn't know to my house after this. From that point forward, when I tried selling my car, I had them meet me at a local business or something. If you use any websites like Facebook Marketplace or Craigslist, I would advise you to learn from my mistake and meet in a public location if you have to meet at all.
This was my scariest experience using Craigslist. It takes place many years ago now. So I was looking around on the free ads, which I did kind of a lot back then. I didn't have that much money and was always looking for good deals or cool things for free. I didn't get a whole lot of things, but I had managed to buy a few cheap deals over the years. So I remember that I saw this TV that was for free. The ad didn't really say much. It just had a picture of a pretty nice looking TV that was on the floor of a room. The TV was on and the ad just said, "TV for free, works fine, no problems." That was all the information that it had. The city was pretty close by, so I decided to text the owner. I figured, why not? I mean, it was free, so what's the worst that could happen? After contacting the owner of the TV, they told me to come by and get it that night at 10 p.m. I said okay. Looking back, that was pretty late, but I didn't question it. I figured maybe they worked late or something, and with the TV being free, I didn't feel like I should be nitpicking about when I got it. I mean, if it worked like it said, the TV was worth at least $100. Now, I never really wondered why somebody would give it away for free at the time. Maybe I just wanted to believe it, even though it seemed too good to be true. So that night, I set out to pick up the TV. I had the address and I put it in on my phone. It was like 10 minutes away, and when I got to the neighborhood, I got kinda nervous. It looked pretty sketchy and not the best area. It was quiet though. Most of the houses looked small and run down. I parked my car on the side of the street and got out anyways though. I texted the owner saying that I was there and they told me to come in and get the TV. So I walked up to the front door and knocked on it to be polite. I didn't want to just walk right in. As I knocked on the door, I didn't see any lights on inside really. I waited after knocking and nobody seemed to be coming to the door. This only made me feel even more nervous. Then, finally, I heard a woman's voice yell from inside the house, "Come on in." I could tell that she was not by the door, and I wasn't sure why she didn't answer it, but I did what she said and I walked in. The house was mostly dark, but there were a few dim lights on. To the left there was a living room, and to the right there was a small pantry. Straight ahead was a hallway and the kitchen and a dining room area. The woman was standing in the kitchen. I barely saw her, and she said, "You're here for the TV?" I said, "Yes, ma'am." She said, "It's up in the attic, you'll have to go get it." There was a ladder coming down from the ceiling with the door slightly open on the right side of the hallway just in front of the kitchen. The woman did not give any reason at all as to why she didn't bring the TV down herself, or why she couldn't go up and get it. Even though everything in my mind and body was telling me not to go up there, I did anyways. I think it was just so awkward that I didn't know what else to do. I got to the ladder and started to take a few steps up. The woman then went around the corner and out of my sight. Meanwhile, the attic was pitch dark, with no lights on inside of it at all. When I made it to the point where my head was now in the attic, but my feet were still on the ladder, I heard something. I couldn't really see anything, but it was definitely the sound of somebody walking in the attic, closer to me. It really freaked me out. In an instant, and out of pure reaction, I zipped back down the ladder. Then, without stopping or anything, I ran to the front door and left the house. I did not stop running until I had made it all the way back to my car. Then I went home. I felt so glad to be back and was grateful that I did not have anything bad happen to me. When I looked online, the listing was now gone. Looking back, there was just way too many red flags in that situation. For one, why would they want me to go up in a dark attic by myself to retrieve the TV? Also, in that neighborhood, why would somebody be giving a working nice TV away for free? And who was in the attic? I hope I'm wrong and that was just some crazy, bizarre, random coincidence, but I don't think I am. A couple of years ago, I was looking for a new car. I looked on Craigslist because I feel that they usually have the best deals. You have to shop around and look for sometimes a couple of weeks, but eventually you can get a great deal. So I found one car that I thought might work for me. The price was good and everything in the ad seemed legit. It wasn't an eye-popping great deal or anything, but it seemed like a very reasonable listing. I texted the owner and said that I was interested. We met up one of the next days. I think we met in a store parking lot somewhere nearby. So after looking at the car, I wanted to take a test drive to make sure that it drove well. The owner was this guy, I think his name was like Jeff or Jordan or something with a J. But anyways, he was tall, kind of thin, had glasses, and really dark hair. He asked if I wanted to go for a test drive, but then he wouldn't let me drive it. I went around to go to the driver's side, and he told me no and told me to go to the passenger seat. So I went around and got in there, and I guess that he wanted to show me that the car ran well. However, he didn't want me to drive it for some reason. So we left the parking lot and began driving down the road. I figured maybe he was just overprotective about his stuff. But this guy started to drive really far away. At first, I didn't realize because I was trying to pay attention to how the car ran. I was more concerned that he might be trying to scam me or something because he wasn't letting me drive. Soon though, we had been driving for like 10 minutes at least, and he hadn't turned around or anything. He seemed like he knew where he was going. Like he wasn't just casually driving around and making random turns nearby the parking lot. He was pretty much just going straight down this one quiet road. We got farther and farther away, and he wasn't saying anything. I told him that we could go back now. The guy said that he wanted to show me how good the car was. I said, I can see it's good, you can take it back now. He said just 1 second, and then kept driving. We drove in silence for the next couple of minutes. After a while, I couldn't take it anymore, and I asked him to turn around, and he said just a minute again. I waited, and still nothing. This was starting to feel really sketchy. I told him that I wanted to go back now, and he completely ignored me. I didn't know what I could do though. He was driving way too fast to just jump out of the car, and I could not try to fight him. I'm a woman who's barely 5'2", and this guy was about 6 feet tall and probably a lot stronger. He turned at one point and went down another random road. This one was also very quiet, and then he kept driving down it. I took out my phone and had no signal. Thanks, T-Mobile. After driving for about another 5 minutes, I saw something up ahead. It was a police car on the right side of the road. I'm not sure if he was trying to pull over speeders or what, because there were no other cars or people nearby. It was just a cop parked on the side of the road. As we approached the cop, I knew that we were going to drive right past him. I tried to roll my window down, but just when it started to go down, it stopped. I realized that the guy driving had disabled my window. Then he rolled it all the way back up. We were getting closer to the cop. Right before we got to him, I started frantically waving to the cop like crazy. I hoped that he would notice. When I did, the guy driving told me to stop and started cursing at me. He tried to grab me and we swerved the car a little. After we drove past the cop, I looked in the mirror and saw the police car start to pull out. Then the blue lights went on. I felt a huge wave of relief. The guy driving asked me what was wrong with me and why I did that stuff. I told him that I just wanted to get out of there. The man pulled over and claimed that he did nothing wrong. But this so-called test drive had been going on for like 30 minutes, and a whole 20 minutes after I told him that I didn't want to go any further and to turn back. After pulling over, a police officer came out and approached us. He asked what was going on and why I was waving frantically and if everything was okay. The guy driving quickly started talking and said we were on a test drive and that I was acting crazy for no reason. I said that I just wanted to get out of the car and leave. The man said no. It's funny how suddenly now he was talking, but when I was asking him to turn around and stuff, he was either completely ignoring me and not talking at all, or just giving basic small responses. Anyways, the cop said that the man was not allowed to hold me against my will, and the guy finally let me out of the car at that point. I explained to the police officer what happened, and he ran the man's ID. Another police officer was called to the scene. In the end, they sadly ended up letting the man go. They gave me a ride back to my car though, and made sure he didn't follow me. Then I went back home. I reported the guy to Craigslist and haven't seen him since. I also haven't gone back on Craigslist since then.
I had a really creepy experience when buying something on Craigslist a few years ago. It all started when I was trying to look for a new TV. I should have just went to the store and bought one, but I was trying to get a deal, so I looked on Craigslist for some used TVs. You can usually get them for significantly less money, and most of the time they work great. So after looking for only like 30 minutes, I found one that I was sure I wanted to buy. I contacted the seller and was told that the TV was available and I could come and buy it the next night. The seller was a man named Joe and told me to come by at 9 p.m. So I got the cash and then the next night drove to his house. He lived just a few minutes away, but in a different neighborhood. I parked on the side of the road across the street from his house. Then I walked up his driveway and then to his front door. I decided to text him that I was there before knocking on the door though, so I texted Joe that I had arrived. Then I stood there just off the front step and looked around. When I was doing so, I noticed something through the living room window. There was a man looking out of it towards me. I only saw him for a moment before he disappeared. I figured that it was Joe, but moments later I received a text from him. He said that he was not home, but he would arrive back in a couple of minutes. He said that I could wait right outside. I was confused, but then figured the guy in the house maybe also lived there or something. But to be honest, I was a little bit suspicious, so I just stood around the front step and waited like Joe asked me to. A couple of minutes went by. I was just casually standing there, looking around. I didn't see the guy in the window anymore, but I soon heard what sounded like the back door to the house opening and closing. I couldn't confirm it because I could barely hear it, but that's what it sounded like. I figured whoever I had seen might have gone out back, but still, I was just waiting for Joe to get back. A couple more minutes went by. I was still there and starting to get impatient. I looked at my phone, but there was no new notifications or anything. Then, all of a sudden, I heard this noise behind me. I looked back, and I saw this man walking out from behind a large tree not far away from me in the front yard. I was pretty sure that this was the same guy I had seen looking out the window at me. He saw me, and he was not at all approaching me in a friendly way, like to greet me. Before I could even ask what was going on though, I saw the guy start to lunge towards me. I quickly moved away and then just ran. It was really all out of instincts and just a reaction. I sprinted away through the front yard as the man actually chased after me. I sprinted for my car, running as fast as I possibly could. Thankfully, I was able to make it. I got inside and closed and locked the door behind me. Moments later, the man got to my car. He tried opening the door, and I was busy starting the engine at that point. He banged on the window like twice before I hit the gas and sped away, leaving him standing there in the street. I got out of that neighborhood and was so confused that I didn't even know what was going on. I drove back to my house, and on the drive I was able to calm down. When I got back, I looked at my phone and had no new calls or texts. That's when I realized that Joe was probably the same person who tried to attack me, and he was looking at me through the window. The whole thing must have been some kind of a setup. Why? I'm not exactly sure. I ended up going back on Craigslist to look for the listing so that I could report it, but it was gone. Joe also blocked me. I still reported it to Craigslist, and I also notified police. Hopefully Joe didn't try to scam anybody else. I'm really glad that I got out of that situation safely.
A while back, I was selling a bunch of electronics on Facebook Marketplace. I'm not a dealer or professional seller or anything like that. It was more of a situation where I was just going through all my electronics, and I was planning on moving soon. I had never gotten rid of anything really, and there was a bunch of stuff that I didn't use, so I decided to sell it all at once. I was selling a couple of Apple laptops, 2 TVs, an old cell phone, as well as some speakers and a couple of other small things. If everything sold, I would make a couple $1,000. I listed everything at pretty reasonable prices. Well, literally the next day, I got a couple of messages. The first one was from this one woman. She told me that she wanted to buy one of the laptops. I told her that was fine and gave her my address. I said she could come by the next afternoon if she wanted to, and she agreed. So I lived by myself in a house that I was renting at the time. It was kind of small, but like I said, I was going to be moving pretty soon into something a little nicer. So I didn't correspond much with the woman other than to tell her my address and a time. The next day she showed up and I was ready to sell her the laptop. She looked fairly young, but nothing seemed strange about her. I let her in my house and had the laptop on a table near the door. She saw it and looked at it, and I showed her that it turned on and off and worked fine. She mentioned that she saw I was selling some other stuff as well and that she might be interested in that too. I had all the stuff there in the living room in a few boxes. I asked her what in particular, and she said nothing yet, but maybe later. I said okay, and the woman then said that she needed to think about buying the laptop. Then she said bye and left. I was disappointed not to make a sale. I really thought that she would buy the laptop, but it happens. I figured I would easily be able to sell the stuff. I already had received a couple of messages about various things that I was selling. Nothing had materialized yet though. So for the rest of the day, I didn't meet with anyone else or anything. That night, however, I was awoken in the middle of the night. The first thing I remember after waking up is hearing a knock at my front door. I looked at the clock and it was nearly 2 a.m. I didn't know why anybody would be at my door so late. I got up and then left my bedroom. As I did, the knocking not only continued but got louder. Before opening the front door though, I went to a window to look out and see who was there. I'm not going to lie, I was pretty nervous. When I looked out though, I saw 3 men standing aggressively right outside my front door. They were banging on it and right there, like if I opened the door they were going to rush me. I did not open the door. They kept banging on it though. Then I heard them trying to open it as well. I heard one of the guys yell that he heard me. He yelled for me to open the door now. I did not. Instead, I ran to my bedroom and then locked myself in there. Admittedly, I did not have anything to defend myself with. I called the cops and hid in my room. They continued banging on the door and trying to get in. This went on for what felt like forever, but probably 5 minutes. Then I heard them stop kind of suddenly, and maybe a minute later the cops got there. So I think they knew that the cops were coming. I went out and told the officers everything that I knew. They looked around but did not find the men, whoever they were. They must have left. I was just grateful that they didn't get in. The next day I went out and bought security cameras. After thinking about it, I think they knew the woman who looked at my stuff, though I can't prove it. The men never came back, and the woman never messaged me again and didn't show up. It is my belief that she knew I had all those electronics and went to my place to scope it out. Then she told those goons that I would be good to rob. They probably were going to rush me if I opened the door. I didn't live there much longer and was glad to leave. I unlisted all my electronics as well after that and waited and then sold them in my new city instead. This is my Craigslist horror story. I wanted to buy a TV from there last year. I saw an ad for a nice TV that looked pretty new. It was an LG and the price was really good, a lot cheaper than you can get at the store. It was also a pretty new TV, and I figured that I would be getting a great bargain. So I reached out to the guy selling it and told him that I would buy it. He said okay and gave me his address and instructed me to come by the next night at 9 o'clock. It was cool with me, so I went over there the next evening. I arrived on time, and it was this sketchy neighborhood, but to be honest, mine isn't that much better, so I wasn't tripping or anything. I parked my car, got out, and walked up to the door and knocked. Within a minute, the door opened, and this dude with a t-shirt, jeans, and cap answered. I told him that I was there to buy the TV, and he let me in the house. He first asked for the money almost right away, which I had on me. I was about to give it to him, and I saw the TV sitting right there on the floor, but it was not the same TV from the ad. Most TVs look alike, so I was nearly fooled, but I've had quite a few TVs in my day, and I picked up on it. This one was slightly smaller than advertised, and it was also not the right brand. I was buying an LG, and I could see that this was some off-brand crap that probably didn't even work. If it did, the picture quality was probably terrible. I said, wait a minute, this isn't the right TV. I hoped that maybe the guy was selling multiple TVs and just got them mixed up, but he quickly said that this was the right TV and sounded almost angry. He told me to take it and started picking it up. I told him no, I don't want that cheap knockoff crap. The guy said a deal's a deal and started telling me to give him the money. I said no, the deal was for an LG, that's what was advertised. I then asked him straight up if he even had the LG TV that was advertised. The guy said that he didn't know what I was talking about and said this was the TV from the ad that he advertised the whole time. At that point, I just decided to leave. I told him he could scam somebody else and walked out the door. The guy started following me though, telling him to give him his money. I didn't see a weapon or anything, and I don't think he had one, at least I hope not. So I left the guy's house and went into his front yard to go to my car. The guy also left the house and started following me into the yard. At that point, I started running. I sprinted to my car, quickly unlocked it, and got inside. The man started running after me. I drove away as fast as I could. The guy ran all the way out to the street after me, but he wasn't able to quite reach me, thankfully. I went back home and looked at the ad again. It was still up, and it was still advertised as an LG, which was larger and not at all the same as the TV he tried to sell me. I'm glad I got out of there. Next time I buy something on Craigslist, I'm not entering anybody's house, and I'm not showing them any money until I see that it's not a scam.
I'm somebody who enjoys going to thrift stores and occasionally pawn shops. I love saving money and finding good deals. I buy a lot of used items, and I've probably saved lots of money over the years. I occasionally like to browse Facebook Marketplace for good deals on stuff.
There usually is. Most of the things I don't want or need, so I don't buy. But every now and then, I find a deal that's too good to pass up. This story takes place about 6 months ago. Up until that point, I had probably purchased about 3 or 4 things on Facebook Marketplace. All of the experiences had been good to that point. As I was scrolling through the items for sale one day, I came across an iPhone. It was unlocked, meaning it could work with any service provider. All you needed was the SIM card. This was 2 generations newer than mine, and it was a very reasonable price. I kinda needed a new phone, plus there were no noticeable problems to it, and it said to be in like-new condition. It was a new listing as well, so I was excited. I tried to jump on it fast. I reached out to the seller, who responded back to me rather quickly. He was a man, and was not all that far away. I tried to make arrangements to buy the phone as soon as possible, and said whenever he was free would work for me as well. We agreed to meet the next day at a nearby Target store. This was the biggest and most popular store in the area, and it was also close to us both. The next day, I drove to Target with the money, and I was excited to buy my new phone. I knew that I was getting a really good deal. I arrived about 10 minutes before the meeting and went inside Target. After walking around for a while, the time came. I sent a message letting the seller know that I was inside the Target. I was looking around, but I couldn't find him. After about 10 more minutes went by, he finally texted me back. He apologized and said that something had come up and he couldn't make it that night. I was disappointed, but I told him okay, maybe tomorrow. I decided to leave Target then and not get anything. After going back to my car and driving away, I was followed for several miles by a blue 4-door sedan. Of course, I suspected maybe it was the same guy who was selling me the phone, and this was some kind of setup. Maybe I'm paranoid, but when buying things on Facebook Marketplace or Craigslist, those kind of things always pop into my head. I couldn't tell who was driving the car behind me, but it did look to be a male. I didn't want him following me all the way home, and I decided to pull over on the side of the road. It was a standard and somewhat busy road, and at first, the car behind me started to pull over as well, but when I came to a full stop, he then pulled back onto the road and sped past me. I tried to look inside the car when he passed by, but I didn't get a very good look at all. After the car passed me by, I waited and watched it go out of sight. Then, I got back onto the road and drove the rest of the way back home to my house. After getting back and going inside, it wasn't long before I glanced out the window and happened to see the same car. It was going extremely slow down the road. I ducked down so he wouldn't see me. The car passed by my house and then went out of sight. About a minute later, I saw it driving back from the other direction. It didn't stop at my house or anything, but it was driving really slow. I just hoped that guy didn't know where I lived. After that, I decided to block the seller on Facebook. I had no interest in buying the phone anymore. To this day, I don't know for sure if that was the same person who was following me home or driving down my street. I do think it was the seller from Facebook though. I also don't think he knows my exact address, but he somehow figured out the street that I live on. Either way, nothing strange happened, and I'm glad to say everything's been fine since.
I'm one of those people that's always getting a new phone. I get one almost every year. For me, it's just a personal preference. A lot of times, I trade in my old phone for a new one, but that's not always the case. I happened to just buy a new iPhone a while back, but I still had my old one, so I decided to sell it on Facebook Marketplace. The phone was still pretty new, and I figured that somebody would want it. I listed it for a reasonable price, and within a day, someone had made me an offer. I sold it to them, and after receiving payment, I shipped it to the buyer, which was a man named Elliot. Now, everything seems normal, and it was. He got the phone, and I thought that was the end of that. But maybe like a week later, I got a friend request on Facebook from Elliot, the buyer of the phone. I didn't know him at all, other than that he bought my phone. I clicked on his profile, and I knew that he lived in the same state, in a city that was like an hour or two away. When I clicked on his profile though, there wasn't all that much information because we weren't friends. I thought that it was kind of weird though, so I declined his request. The next day, he sent me a message. He asked me why I declined his request and said that he really wanted to be friends with me. I told him, I just sold you the phone. I don't know you at all other than that. Please don't take it personally. I just don't know you. He kept sending me messages though. He called me some things that I will not repeat here, and he seemed pretty angry. At that point, I blocked him. It was really strange to say the least, but I thought that was the end of it. Now, Elliot did not contact me through Facebook or any other social media for that matter after that. What he did was much worse. The next night, a few hours after I had gotten home from work, there was a knock on the front door. I walked over to the front of my house and looked out the window to see what looked like Elliot standing there. I couldn't believe that he was actually at my house. I never would have guessed that he would have done that. When I saw this, I jumped back and walked away from the door. He knocked again. There was no way that I was answering the door. This guy had to be insane. I heard him yell that he knew I was home from the other side of the door. I'm not sure how he knew that. Maybe he heard me walking when I went by the door. I didn't think that he saw me when I looked out of the window. Still, I wasn't going to answer it. Instead, I called the police. I told them that a man who I had met on Facebook showed up at my house unannounced and uninvited and would not leave. I was told that somebody would be there shortly, and the police got there much faster than I expected. Elliot basically stayed on my front step. He didn't try to force entry, but he sure wasn't leaving. When the police got there, they talked to him, and then they talked to me as well. Eventually, they got Elliot to leave and told him that if he came back, he would be arrested. He agreed not to come back, and luckily, he kept his word. I haven't seen him or been contacted by him since then. I still can't believe that he did that, though.
So this happened years back when I was younger. I've done a little bit of acting over the years. It's not my only job, but I've appeared in several commercials and have done a little modeling and stuff. At one point, around the time of this story, I hadn't had that much experience yet. I had been struggling to find jobs and was looking everywhere. I needed cash and was looking at gigs and jobs on Craigslist. I came across one that seemed promising. It was an ad for a model needed to help promote a product for a business. It seemed right up my alley, and I responded, saying that I was interested in the job. The next day, I received a response from a man named Eric saying that he wanted to meet me for a job interview. I didn't know that there was going to be an interview, but I agreed to it. He gave me an address for the interview. I thought that it would maybe be the company that was doing the ad or something, but when I arrived, it looked like an apartment complex. Then I was supposed to go up to Eric's apartment. This seemed a little sketchy. I did it anyways, though. When I met with Eric, he just seemed weird and kind of gave me a bad feeling. He was not really that great at talking, and the whole thing was just really awkward. He asked me some of my background information and my experience. Then he asked me where I lived and where I went to school and stuff. After basic talk for maybe 5 minutes, he asked if I wanted the job. At that point, I just had a bad feeling. I told him no thanks, I would decline it, and then I left. He was just like, okay, bye. Now, after that day, I didn't think much else of it. I ended up getting a different part-time job the next week. Then, like maybe a month after the meeting with Eric, I saw this news story online on my phone. I saw a picture of the same guy Eric who I had interviewed with. The news story said that he had been arrested for stalking a woman in the area. I read the story, and pretty much he had lied to her about having a modeling and acting agency. Then he kept stalking her and started threatening her as well. I was shocked and at the same time not that surprised. I'm really glad that he was caught, and I realized how close I came to him possibly stalking me as well.
Last year, I was selling a motorized scooter on Facebook Marketplace. This scooter was pretty new and one of the nicer ones as well. I had got it brand new for over $500. Well, not long after listing it at all, it started to get some interest. There was this one guy who messaged me about it pretty early on and said that he wanted to come over and look at it. I asked him how serious he was about it, and he said very. I had the scooter in my garage, and after this guy agreed to pay the full price for it, I told him that he could come over and buy it. I gave him my address, which is a pretty standard house where I live with my wife. That evening at around 6 p.m., the guy came over. I went out into the driveway and met him there. I can't remember what his name was, but I was basically expecting him to see the scooter, turn it on and try it, and then give me the money. I had my garage door open and the scooter was just outside of it. The guy walked over and looked at the scooter. We turned it on and I showed him that it worked. But then the guy looked at it for a while longer and said that he would have to think about it. I told him that I thought he said he was serious, and he said that he was, but then he said something about he could get it when he got paid next week. I knew that meant probably no, and I just said alright, whatever, and then said bye to the guy. He walked away, and I put the scooter away back in the garage. Then I went inside of my house. So, hours later, at probably 10 or 11 p.m. that night, I was inside and going to go to bed very soon. I was in the living room with my wife, and we heard this noise coming from outside. I couldn't tell exactly what it was, and I got up to look out the window, but really couldn't see anything. As I was looking though, we heard another noise. I still couldn't tell what it was, so I went over to the front door and I opened it. I knew the noise was coming from outside and near the driveway. After I opened up the door, I heard some movement from the bushes near the garage. I stepped outside and asked who was there. Nobody answered me. I walked closer to where I heard the sounds. It was very dark and quiet now. I couldn't see very well, but I continued to go closer. Soon, I reached my garage area. There were some bushes to the side of it, between the fence leading to my next-door neighbor's yard. I walked over to that, and then I realized that the smaller door to my garage was open a crack. At this point, I probably should have walked back inside my house and called the police, but I didn't. Instead, I walked to the door and opened it. I looked inside of the dark garage, but just moments later, I saw some movement and then noticed a man walking towards me. I moved back and left the garage. I went back towards my house and then heard the guy running in another direction behind me. When I looked, I noticed that it was the same guy who had come to look at the scooter earlier. He now ran into the street in the opposite direction and then quickly went out of my sight. Somehow, he had gotten into my garage, probably to try to steal the scooter. I called the police and then moved the scooter to inside of my house. The cops came out and I had a conversation with them, but the guy was long gone. After that, they left. Luckily, the man never came back. His Facebook account was deleted too, so I couldn't give it to the police. That was my craziest experience with Facebook Marketplace. A couple of years ago, I was selling my car on Craigslist. It was about 10 years old, and I had recently gotten a little bit newer car. So I figured that I would be able to sell it on Craigslist because it ran just fine and it was a decent car. I had bought cars on Craigslist in the past and sold a couple there as well, so I was familiar with how the website worked and everything, and I had never had a bad experience. But that all changed. After taking photos, I created the listing and I added lots of information about the car. Within 2 days, I got a text message from a woman who introduced herself to me as Jamie. She asked me if the car was still available, and I said yes. Then she asked me if she would be able to come over and look at it. I said yes again. So after that, we arranged for a meeting for her to come and look at the car the following night. I already had the car out in the driveway and I had cleaned it and everything. So that night, Jamie arrived at the agreed time and came to the door. I went outside and met her and then started showing her the vehicle. She looked around at it and then looked inside of the car as well. I remembered that she sat in the driver's seat and I asked her if she wanted to take the car for a test drive. She said yes, so I got inside the passenger seat. It was a pretty short test drive though, with Jamie really just driving the car around the block and then going back. After that, she parked back in the driveway and we got out. Jamie told me that she decided that she was not going to buy the car. I said that was fine, and then we said bye to each other. I figured there was something about the car that she didn't like. I just hoped that I would find a buyer eventually. So after that, I just went back inside. Well, hours later, when it was like midnight, I was about to go to bed. However, I was alerted when I thought I heard the sound of a car door opening and closing coming from not that far outside. My neighborhood is typically pretty quiet, so it was unusual to hear things like that. I went over to the living room and looked out of my front window. When I did, I saw this woman standing outside right near my car that I was trying to sell, and upon looking closer, I realized that it appeared to be Jamie. I wasn't sure what she was doing out there. I watched her as she appeared to look around in the windows of the car. She also appeared to try opening one of the doors, which was locked. Then, she walked around to the passenger side of the car, and she was messing around at one of the doors for a while. That's when I decided to ask her what was going on. I opened up the door and shouted to her, asking what she was doing. She looked up at me, startled, and then quickly ran off. She went all the way back to her car, got inside, and quickly drove away. After that, I wasn't really sure what to do. I tried texting her, asking her why she came to my house, but I think she blocked my number because it didn't look like the text went through. After that, I never saw her again. I ended up reporting what happened to Craigslist. Looking back, I don't know if she was trying to steal my car or what, but I'm glad that I saw her when I did.
This is a crazy experience that I had years ago. I was 16 at the time, and my older brother was 19. I remember that one day he asked me if I would go with him to buy an ATV. I guess he had found one on Facebook Marketplace and was going to go buy it that night. That's really all I knew. My brother had a truck that he could put the ATV in the back of, and I guess the ATV itself was broken or something, but my brother had a friend who could fix it. So anyways, we left our house and my brother drove to the place he was buying it from. The place was a good 20 minutes away from us. We got there after dark, but I guess that was the time they arranged to meet. So the place was a house and was in this neighborhood that was a little bit out in the country. The houses were real spread out with a lot of land. There were also a good number of trees. At this one house in particular, it had a lot of pine trees all over the yard. We parked across the street, got out, and walked to the house. I remember that after going to the front door and knocking on it, nobody answered. We kept standing there and waiting, but nobody came to the door. After a couple of minutes and several more tries of knocking, we suddenly heard a noise to the left and kind of behind us. After looking, we saw that there was a man standing there. I obviously had no idea if this was the guy selling the ATV or not, but I assumed that it was for a moment. But for some reason, the guy looked angry. My brother turned and said hi to him. But instead of saying hi back to us, the man just started running towards us really aggressively. This was really strange. We both just took off running. The angle the guy was coming at us from was nearly from the street, so we both ran deeper into the yard. We ran through the yard, passing by tons of trees. Eventually, we tried to make it back to the street. It was hard to see because there was no light back there. Soon though, we were able to run around the backyard and eventually go into the direction of the street. We kept running and made it back to the car. When we got inside, we no longer saw the guy chasing after us. At first, we thought that we had lost him, but when we left, we soon saw another car driving behind us. This seemed to be the same guy, because wherever we went, the car went as well. Eventually, my brother went into some random neighborhood and kept making turns left and right. This went on for about 10 minutes or so. Finally, the car stopped following us. We drove the rest of the way back home after that. I had no idea what had happened, but my brother didn't seem to know either. We had no clue who that guy was or why he was chasing us. The seller, I guess, blocked my brother after that. My brother then reported it to Facebook. That was the craziest thing to ever happen to me.
Back when I was poor and in college, I used to sometimes look on Craigslist to see what people were giving away for free. Most of it was junk, or stuff that I didn't want, but occasionally there would be good things there. I actually once got a pretty decent TV for free, as well as a couple of other pieces of furniture, so I would just go on here and there and look around. It was casual, and I certainly wasn't expecting to find something every time that I went on. But one day when I went on the free stuff, I saw a listing that had literally just been posted like 5 minutes prior. It was an ad for a MacBook laptop for free. At first, I thought that it was one of those scams, where somebody lists something for free, but when you actually click on it, the description says that it's like $5,000 or whatever. So when I clicked on the ad, the person said that it was actually free. They said that it worked fine, and mentioned something about because of their job they had a bunch of laptops. It was not the newest MacBook, but about 5 years old. This made it seem more legitimate to me. Still, this was an amazing opportunity, it seemed. And I know what you're saying, it's way too good to be true. But to me, it was worth reaching out and asking. So I quickly texted the number listed, and I asked if the laptop was still available and said that I would like to get it if it was. Within a minute or so, the number responded saying that it was. They asked me for my name, and I told them. About an hour or so later, they responded again with an address, saying that I could come and pick it up that night at about 10 o'clock. I was excited, and I thought that I was getting the deal of a lifetime. So that night, I left my place a little before 10 and drove out to the address. It was a lot farther away than I expected, probably about 20 minutes. When I got to the neighborhood, it looked pretty sketchy, to be honest. Most of the houses were run down, and the yards were overgrown. I started to get a bad feeling, but I was already there, so I wasn't just going to leave. I found the address and then parked on the side of the road in front of it. I walked up to the house, which did not appear to be in great shape. I texted the owner that I was there, and then went up and knocked on the door. After a few moments, I heard somebody walking up to the door, and then it opened. There was a guy with long hair and a patchy beard who answered. He said hi, and then instantly invited me to come inside. I walked in the house, which looked pretty run down. It almost looked abandoned, to be honest. Almost every light was off, except for this dim one in the other room. The man told me to go into that room, and so I did. This appeared to be a bedroom or an office, but there was no furniture in it except for these 2 old chairs and a folding table. The guy told me to have a seat, and I did in one of the chairs. The man said that he would be right back and go get the laptop. By now, I was completely sketched out by this whole thing. I was kicking myself for even entering the house, but I was hanging on to the hope that I would get a free laptop. Looking back, I should not have even gone to the house. If somebody lived in a place like that, why would they be giving away a free laptop? Well, after the man left the room, I just sat there and waited. But the longer I did, the more nervous I became. Then, suddenly, the door slammed shut to the room that I was in. I could tell that somebody had closed it, and the wind hadn't blown it shut or anything like that. I got up and stood there for a moment. The door did not open. I walked over to it and tried to open it, but it was being held shut. Somebody was on the other side. I was terrified now. I went back inside the room and looked around. I didn't know what to do, and I panicked. I felt like somebody might run in and attack me or something. There was this one closet in the corner of the room, so I went inside of it and shut the door. Then I called 911 on my cell phone. I quietly told the dispatcher of my situation, and I gave them the address as well. Then I waited. I was expecting at any moment somebody to enter the room that I was in. I hoped that I would be able to hold the closet door shut if they tried to open it or something. But nobody came in the room. Things were just silent. About 10 minutes later, the cops got there. I remember that they came inside of the house, and I left the room, finding that the door was no longer being held shut. The police searched the house thoroughly, only to find that nobody was there. They also searched the property and nearby area and came up empty-handed. But they did tell me that the house I was in was abandoned and nobody lived there. So whoever lured me there did not actually live there. I was extremely creeped out. After that, I told the police everything that I could about the situation, and then I went back home. The Craigslist ad had been deleted by then. I also found out that the phone number that I'd been texting with was a burner phone. I don't know why the guy just left, but I'm glad that he did. Maybe he realized I had my phone and I could call the police. I honestly have no idea, but I'm glad that I made it out of there okay, and I haven't been on Craigslist since.
A while back, I was selling an iPad on Facebook Marketplace. I took a few pictures of it and then posted the listing online. I remember that sometime the next day, I got a message from somebody on Facebook about it. However, it was not what I expected. The person's profile was a creepy picture of a clown, and their name was just Clown. I thought that it was kind of weird, but they asked if the iPad was still available. I said yes. I thought that maybe the person was young or had that profile as a joke or something. They said that they wanted to buy it and asked me when they could. This person seemed normal enough through our messages, so I said they could buy it. We agreed to the next day at 6 p.m. I gave this clown person my address, which looking back I should not have done. I didn't think of it at the time, but that could be a dangerous thing. I lived in a house with my wife and child, and I didn't think that anything bad could happen. I would be home the whole time and was just going to sell an iPad quickly. The following evening at 6 p.m., no one showed up. I texted the clown on Facebook and asked him if he was still coming. He never responded. This happens though. There's people all the time that say they'll buy something and then they never show up. It's rude to make an appointment and not even let me know that you're not going to be there, but still, it happens. The night went on and I got no response and nobody showed up. I was curious to see who this person even was, because their Facebook profile was just them dressed as a creepy looking clown. So that same night, I happened to be up late. I'm a bit of a night owl, and it was probably like 11 o'clock p.m. I saw that I got a message on Facebook from the clown. I thought that maybe he was going to say why he didn't come earlier, but instead he said, "I'm here." I was confused. I thought maybe he had been there earlier and the message didn't show up until now for some reason. I texted back saying, "Wait a minute, are you here right now at 11 p.m.? He did not respond. I got up and walked over to the living room. I looked out of a window and saw the clown there. There was this creepy looking clown just standing in our front yard looking at the house. I looked out of the window and saw him there. There was a creepy looking clown just standing in our front yard looking at the house. He was just standing there not moving. It was really creepy. I texted the guy again, but he didn't answer. I could see that he was not on his phone. I went over to the door and opened it just a crack. I yelled out to the guy asking why he was here so late. He did not respond. He just stood there staring at me. I told him I wasn't going to sell him the iPad now. I asked him to come back at a normal hour and not dressed as a clown. Still, he said nothing and just kept standing there staring at me. I was too creeped out. Then he started to walk slowly towards me. I quickly shut the door, locked it, and walked away from the door and walked over to the window again. I watched him and he walked up the driveway a bit and then turned around and walked back. He got to the street and then slowly walked away. When he was out of my sight, I went on Facebook and told him not to come back. Thankfully, he didn't. I never saw him again, but I stopped using Facebook Marketplace after that.
Last year, I really needed a new laptop. I used a computer daily for college and work occasionally as well. It was something that I really needed in my daily life. The one I had though was old and really slow, and I had been saving up to buy a new one for a while. My sister suggested that I look on Facebook Marketplace, and so one night I went out and searched laptops. I was looking for a newer and more powerful one, and after several days of searching and a lot of research, I found a listing of one that seemed to be a really good deal. I did some more quick research on it and decided it was the best option for me. I then reached out to the seller. The seller responded to me pretty quickly. His name was Brian, and when I contacted him, he told me he could meet up with me the next afternoon when he got off of work. I told him I was willing to buy the laptop at the time, as long as it worked good, and I would pay the full price he was asking for it, which was $800 cash. I knew that was significantly less money than it costed brand new in the stores, and I felt like I was going to get a really good deal. Brian told me that worked fine, and we agreed to meeting up the next day when he got off of work. There was a little shopping area in the town that I lived in, and we decided to meet in the parking lot of the place. It was usually pretty busy, and we drove into one of the back corners of the parking lot that was a more quiet area. My sister decided to go with me so I wasn't alone, and we drove to the location right on time. It was 2 p.m, and I think we got there maybe a couple of minutes early. Then we waited. I had messaged Brian telling him when I was leaving, and he told me he was leaving as well. When he wasn't there yet, I figured he was on his way, or maybe he got held up at work. My sister and I both sat in the car waiting and just talked as we did. Eventually, time went by, and we started to get concerned. Nobody was near us in the quiet area of the parking lot where we agreed to meet, and Brian was now more than 10 minutes late. I messaged Brian, telling him exactly where I was and the car that I was in, and asked where he was. We kept waiting, and he didn't respond. Pretty soon it was almost 30 minutes past our meeting time. I then looked and saw that Brian had read my message that I had sent to him, but he never responded. My sister and I left, feeling frustrated that the guy never showed up. My sister thought maybe he realized the laptop he was selling was worth a lot more than the asking price, or something like that. We both drove back home, which was our parents' house that we lived in while we were away from college. Our parents were both at work, so it was just us there for the time. After we got home, I once again went back onto Facebook Marketplace, but it appeared as though I had been blocked by Brian and everything was deleted. This made me angry to see, and after that, I decided to search for more laptops and kind of start over. I was in my bedroom when suddenly I heard my sister come running in. She told me she heard a noise coming from the back window and then saw a guy out there. We both walked out, and almost as soon as we did, we heard the sound of our back door being opened. It was only 3 o'clock, and our parents usually didn't arrive home until after 5. We knew it was probably the guy my sister had seen. We both ran back into my room and shut the door. We pressed our heads up against the door and listened. Somebody was now walking through our house. My bedroom was at the end of the hallway, and the man was not all that far away. I asked my sister what we should do. She said she was going to call the police and took out her phone. But just as she did, we heard the footsteps headed towards us. We got as quiet as we could. My sister wasn't able to place the call to the police yet because we were afraid to make any kind of noises. We heard whoever was there walk slowly into the hallway and then into a bedroom. My sister said it sounded like he was in her room now. I then got an idea. I said that we had to get out of there, and I pointed to my window. I then ran over to it, and as quietly as I could, started to open it. The house only had one level, so as long as we could get out there, we would be able to get away. I opened up the window, and as I did, it suddenly made a loud noise. Just then, we heard the guy start to leave my sister's room and come down the hall towards my bedroom. I jumped out the window, followed by my sister, and as she was climbing out, I heard my bedroom door open. We both ran out the yard and down to the neighbors across the street who we knew really well. Luckily, they were home, and we waited in their garage as we called the police. When the police got there, the man was still in our house, and they caught him in our basement. He turned out to be the same man named Brian that was going to sell me a laptop. He had never met with us, but was in the same shopping center parking lot when we were there. He was just parked next to all the other cars. He then followed us home without us knowing and attempted to break into our house, possibly for the cash I had to buy the laptop. At least that's my best guess of his reasons. Either way, I won't use Facebook Marketplace again.
I have a terrible horror story from using Facebook Marketplace. I'm telling you, I will never use it again, and I'm still mad about it. So this happened about 2 years ago. I had this really nice 50-inch TV, which had been the main TV in my living room. However, I got a new one that was 65 inches. The other one was too big for my bedroom, and I already had one in there, so I decided to sell the 50-inch TV. I thought, what better place to sell a television than Facebook Marketplace? So I took a couple of pictures and then listed it. At first, I got nothing. Then somebody lowballed me, and I blocked them for making such an insulting offer. Then somebody reasonable came along. It was a guy named Tim. Tim said that he was interested in buying the TV and asked me if it worked. I told him yes, it works just like new, which it did. He then gave me an offer, and I countered, which he accepted. I was perfectly satisfied with the amount of money that I would be getting. So we arranged a date and time for Tim to come over and buy the TV. When it arrived, he showed up to my house, and I invited him inside. I turned on the TV, showing him that it worked and everything. Then he paid me the cash, and I gave him the television. He carried it out into his car, and then he left. I was happy with the sale that I made. A couple of weeks went by, and then, out of nowhere, I got a message from Tim on Facebook. He said that the TV broke, and he wanted a full refund for it. Now, when I sold it to him, it had worked just fine. It was also 2 weeks since I had made the sale. I was a seller on Facebook Marketplace. I don't offer any kind of a warranty. I told him no. I was pretty confident that whatever happened to the TV, if anything actually happened to it, it was probably Tim's fault. Out of curiosity, I asked him what exactly happened to the TV. Tim claimed that he had no clue and said that it was just broke. He also said that I must have done something to it. He then claimed that he could sue me. I asked to see a picture. Tim sent me a picture of the TV, which had clearly been smashed. It looked like somebody had punched the screen. I asked him if he had punched it, which made him really angry. He asked me if I was going to give him a refund or not. I told him no. I told him that it's been weeks and I'm not required to offer any kind of a warranty. I reminded him how I showed him the TV worked fine just before he bought it. Tim then cursed me out and I blocked him. I couldn't believe he expected me to give him a refund. That very same night, he showed up at my house. Obviously, he knew my address from before, and he banged on my door after getting there. I did not open it for him, and I yelled for him to go away. He shouted back that he was not leaving without his money. He said that he brought the TV with him, and he wanted to return it. I looked out the window, and I saw that he did in fact have the TV with him. I said that he couldn't, and that was that. Tim still wasn't leaving, so I threatened to call the police. Finally, that seemed to get him to go away. But as he was leaving, I watched him walk over to my car in the driveway and throw the TV at my windshield.
He then walked away, leaving the TV on the driveway. After he left, I walked out to see if there was any damage to my car. Surprisingly, there wasn't. The windshield held up perfectly. I couldn't say the same for the TV though. It was already broken, but after it fell to the pavement of the driveway, it got even more broken. Luckily though, I never saw Tim or heard from him again after that.
Last year, I was selling an old coffee table on Facebook Marketplace. I was only asking $40 for it, and it was in good shape, but it was nothing too special. It was kind of old, so I figured it was a reasonable price. It took a while to receive any kind of interest. After a couple of weeks, though, I did get one person who asked about it. It was a guy named Spike. He asked me if I was willing to do $30 for the table. I said sure. I was happy to get anything for it, and if it didn't sell, I would probably just give it to Goodwill. He asked when would be a good time for him to come over and pick it up, and I told him the next night between 5 and 7 p.m. would be fine if it worked for him. He agreed to the time, and I gave him my address. I was happy to finally get rid of the old table. The next day, I moved my table to right inside my front door so it would be easy for Spike to just grab it and go after paying me. When 5 o'clock came, I hadn't received any kind of messages from Spike, so I assumed that he would be there any time. However, as time went by, it was soon 7 o'clock and Spike didn't show up. I decided to go on Facebook and message Spike to see if he was still coming. When I got onto Facebook though, I saw that Spike had blocked me. This was really confusing. Our conversations had gone great, and I didn't understand why he would do that. Still, I guess he just wouldn't buy my coffee table, and I put it back. I kept the listing up in hopes that maybe somebody else would buy it, but things remained quiet. Fast forward to about a week later. It was a normal weeknight, and I was in my living room. I was just about to get ready for bed, and it was probably like 10 or 11 at night. That's when I heard my back door rattling. I live alone, and I wasn't expecting anybody. Plus, I rarely use the back door. Immediately, I had a bad feeling. I started walking over to my kitchen area, which is in the back of the house and is where the back door is. I was maybe halfway there when I heard the sound of glass breaking. It was also coming from that same area. That's when I froze right where I was, and I turned around and dashed for the hallway. I ran for my bedroom, which had a locking door. I got inside and locked myself in. Meanwhile, in my house, I heard some noises in the kitchen. I knew that somebody had broken in, and my first response once inside my room was to call the police. I tried to be as quiet as I could when doing so. As I was speaking with the 911 operator, I was also hearing footsteps inside. I moved all the way into my closet. I was told that the police would be there as soon as they could. Once I was off the phone with the police, I stopped hearing noises throughout the house. I was in there, being as quiet as I could, and hoping that I did not hear any more noises. Eventually, the police arrived and made their way inside. It wasn't until I was sure it was safe that I left my closet and bedroom. Whoever had been in my house, though, was gone. The police couldn't find them anywhere. I did, however, see the broken window and the damage that it caused. The area was searched, but police never found anybody. That really creeps me out to this day. I really think that it was Spike who broke in. I had just given him my address the week prior, and why would he block me so randomly? I gave the information to the police, but I never got any word if they found him or if it was in fact Spike who broke into my house.
This is something that I will never forget. It happened almost 5 years ago now. For some background, I'm a female and was looking to buy a car at the time of this story. I wanted to get something used and somewhat cheap, so I looked to both Craigslist and Facebook Marketplace. After searching those sites for about a week, I found this car that looked really good. It seemed to be a good deal, and after all of my research, I wanted to look at it. So I contacted the seller, saying how I was interested in all that stuff. We ended up talking and arranging a time to meet up and look at the car. The seller was a guy named Mike. He was a bigger guy with a dark goatee. We agreed to meet at this gas station about 5 miles from where I lived. I figured that meeting in a public place would be safe. So I drove my current car at the time, which was barely running. I got to the gas station at about 7 p.m. Things were quiet,
and minutes later, I saw the car that I wanted to buy enter. It parked in the back, and I walked over and met Mike. We talked about the car a little bit, and then he asked me if I wanted to take it for a test drive. I did, because I wanted to make sure that the car ran good and everything. So I remember that Mike told me to get in the passenger seat, and he would show me some things with the car, then let me drive it. Nothing seemed strange about that at first, so I got inside. We then left the gas station and started driving down the road. Mike started talking about the car again, just saying basic stuff. But then after like 5 minutes, I was expecting him to stop driving and let me take over, but he just kept going down the road. And also, I didn't even know where we were anymore. Mike was driving the car down these quiet roads with woods on both sides mainly. We were going farther and farther away from where I lived and the area that I was familiar with. After like 10 minutes, I started to get really worried because Mike was also talking less and less. Now he would maybe say something about the car every minute, and mostly he would just be driving in silence. Finally, I said to Mike, "So could I drive the car now?" Mike quickly responded and said, "Just 1 more minute, I'll let you drive it soon enough." But then like 2 or 3 more minutes passed of us just driving in silence. Then Mike finally started to pull over to the side of the road. We were the only vehicle around, it seemed, and things were very dark and quiet. I thought that he was finally going to let me drive, but as we came to a stop, I noticed this little path going into the woods off the road. There was an SUV with the lights off parked on this path. After we came to a stop, I noticed the driver's and passenger's door opening up on the SUV. I didn't know what was going on, but I had a really bad feeling about it. Mike then turned to me and told me to give him my phone. I asked him why, and at the same time saw multiple people walking from the SUV. They were a good 50 feet away, and I couldn't really tell any details about them. Mike was starting to talk, but I don't remember anything that he said, because as soon as I saw people walking near, I knew that I needed to run away. I opened up the passenger's door and got out. Then I just started sprinting to the woods. As I was running, I heard some commotion. People behind me started to run, and I heard several men's voices shouting. I didn't stop though, and I kept running. I got to the woods and then started running through trees and brush. I heard the people chasing after me, but I didn't stop. As I continued to run, after maybe a minute, I took my phone out. I hit 911 and continued running as I did so. I was doing pretty well running through the woods. I still heard people behind me though, but they were a ways back. I didn't know if I had gotten on with 911 or not, because I was too busy running to stop and look, but I just started saying that I was being chased in the woods and I needed help. I hoped that somebody would hear me. I ran for about as long as I could, and soon I stopped hearing the noises behind me. I was able to slow down after that, and eventually I stopped and I hid. I didn't hear anything, but I once again called the police. They were on the way, and I tried to tell them where I was. They were able to locate me pretty well based off of my call though. Soon I made my way back through the woods and met the police. Mike and the other people were gone, but I told the police what had happened and gave descriptions as best as I could. The only person that I could really describe though was Mike. The police were able to locate him not long after this. I feel so lucky to have gotten away.